Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Became Winter Soldier with Dragon God Apocalypse Powers movie. Before we start, please go support Alessandro Gonzalez 54 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Greed can make the family betray each other, parents and siblings. The greed of his brother Isaac blamed him and killed him. But the dragon gods of sleep and apocalypse will not let the hero die. After all he did, his death cannot be like that. Issei Ex-Hyoudou will be revived by the dragon god of sleep and the dragon god of the apocalypse, with a new body and greater power. He will keep safe the people he cares about now, or if he will care about someone other than himself. And he doesn't care what happens to those who were previously his friends and acquaintances. Prologue. Drops. The sound of drops along with slow breathing was the only thing that could be heard in that dark place. An empty cell. If it weren't for the person chained to the wall of that cell, everything would be a terrifying emptiness. Her dark brown hair, her dull honey-colored eyes, her bruises, her scrapes, her open wounds, her blood spilled on the floor. That person didn't move. He couldn't because of the pain, and he didn't want to. His slow breathing was what accompanied the sound of the drops. The cell door opened, footsteps were heard, and as he got close enough to the chained person, he could see someone he hated. His crimson red hair, his blue eyes and his Mao armor. "I've come for you." Issei Ex-Hyoudou was the voice of that figure, which was male. The brunette was the one who answered to the name of Issei. Some guards entered the cell. They abruptly lifted Issei up while the redhead was not very interested. This was shown by his look of indifference. The guards took the brunette out of the cell, but he could hear the redhead's whisper, "Disgusting traitor." A magic circle appeared outside the cell. A teleportation circle. Issei didn't know where he was. There was only a large room where there were some balconies, a courtroom. When his gaze cleared, he could see many people who looked at him with hatred and contempt. But Issei looked coldly at everyone, or well, almost everyone. There was one person in particular who looked at him with hatred, someone with brown hair like his. Same eye color. His older brother, Issei Ex-Hyoudou. In that room were the faction leaders of the demons, Sirzechs, Lucifer, Gremory of the angels, the archangel Michael of the fallen, their ex-governor, Azazel of the yokais, their leader Yasaka, which had what looked like a 3-month pregnant belly, and finally the Nordics, Odin, Sirzechs. "Well, the accused is here," said the leader of the demons, coldly looking at Issei. "Michael Issei Ex-Hyoudou, you are accused of treason. We have evidence that your brother provided us along with videos." "Issei Ex-Hyoudou, how do you plead?" the blonde asked, coldly looking at Issei. "Issei, I've told you time and time again, I'm innocent, but you never believed me," the brown-haired man replied as if nothing had happened. "Azazel, Issei, this can end if you tell us. What did Rizavim offer you? Money, women, fame, power? Just tell us and your punishment will be lesser," said the dark-haired man with golden locks. "Issei, I already told you nothing. That damn Isaac is lying. But apparently you're idiots," the brunette exclaimed angrily, but was silenced by a punch to the stomach from his brother. "Isaac, shut up! A disgusting traitor like you has no right to raise your voice," the brother said angrily, but inside he was amused by his younger brother's current state. "Odin, well, Issei Ex-Hyoudou, your parents took away your last name. Now you are just Issei, the traitor of the factions. We have already decided your judgment," said the father of all coldly. "Yasaka, your destiny will be death," was what the leader of the yokai said. Issei just stayed quiet. He wasn't impressed by her sentence. They were too stupid to realize the mistake they were making. From the balconies Issei could see a group of women, their parents, and those who were previously their partners. Among them stood out 2 redheads, one with blue eyes and the other with green eyes, all with what looked like a 3-month pregnant belly. Issei was just serious. He felt like every girl was looking at him with hatred and disgust. But Issei only had his gaze on one girl, the redhead with green eyes. The Red Empress, Dream Gotch. The redhead only looked at Issei with total coldness in her eyes. But deep inside her soul it hurt her to see Issei with that look of hatred, and she felt that the son or daughter in her womb was a mistake that would mark her by not being Issei's. "Dream, you were the worst carrier of all. I'm glad to have your brother as a carrier and above all as my partner and father of my future offspring," was what the redhead said in a cold manner. Issei just lowered his gaze to where his brother was, who had a sword full of Samuel's blood. He had a dark smile. Issei was just serious. but his look of hatred was still present. The girls, along with their parents, for some strange reason wanted to prevent this. But they couldn't. Issei was a traitor, and should pay for his crimes. Issei had been pierced by that sword filled with Samuel's blood. His body ached. That blood was killing him just by contact with it. Isaac approached Issei's ear. Isaac, without you, these idiots won't be able to defend themselves. Haha, thanks little brother. Thanks to you I'll have everyone under my control. I hope you rest well, was what the older brown-haired boy whispered to his younger brother. Isaac had removed the sword from Issei's chest. He just fell on his back. But a magic circle would appear on the ground, teleporting Issei. Human world in some alley. A magic circle opened. The body of a dying Issei fell to the ground. He fell, creating a large pool of blood. Issei. Ha! Idiots, cough cough, I want to see your stupid scared faces, cough cough, it's a shame I'm going to die and not be able to see. That was the last thing Issei said before falling unconscious from blood loss along with the pain caused by Samuel's blood. A crack opened in that alley, where two figures emerged, both of which were male. One approached the chestnut tree lying on the ground and lifted him onto one of his shoulders. Wow, he's still alive. That Brad is really surprising, was what the man said. Let's go now. We have to build him another body. He won't last much longer, was what the other man said. Both men re-entered the fissure as it closed behind their backs, taking Issei to who knows where. Issei Ex-Hyoudou, who was once a hero of the factions, was betrayed by his own family. His brother, including that woman who could defend him, betrayed him just for a stupid and insignificant title of Red Celestial Dragon. What they did not know is that in several years they would realize their mistake, and Issei would be someone different. They had betrayed the hero and helped the villain. Chapter 1. In the vast country of Senegal, several people were shopping. Others were walking through the city. Meanwhile, at what looked like a huge fair, it was packed with people, each and every one of them crammed right into the middle. Among all this population, there was a small group. Two boys, apparently around 24 years old, were accompanied by two beautiful girls. One was a blonde with beautiful blue eyes. The other had purple hair and red eyes. Everything is a little too quiet, don't you think, guys? Asked the boy with black hair with brown highlights and gray eyes. The girls and the boy in front nodded. Yes, too much, I would say. And it's uncomfortable since we're being watched by everyone, said the black-haired boy who seemed to be the leader of the group. Everyone started looking in various directions, noticing the looks they were receiving from those who lived there. Guys, can you hear me? A voice had been heard over the intercom as the group got a little closer together. Yes, we can hear you. Natsum, the boy answered for the group. Tell me how things are over there. It's calm, Tobio-kun. Nothing's happening. But do you think the reports about them being in this place were true? Natsum asked through the intercom. She was separated from Tobio-kun, who was the leader of Team/Dog. One of Gregory's best soldiers. Tobio. According to what Azazel said, there were several supernatural movements in this place, said Tobio, looking around. But so far we haven't found anything out of the ordinary. I understand. I'll call if anything happens, Tobio. Tobio. Okay, cutting the intercom call he would pass when he saw the group. The group nodded and continued their search. Meanwhile, on the other side, Natsum Managawa was standing alone in the middle of the place. She would start walking while searching for something. While Tobio's team was walking through those places, suddenly the beautiful blonde-haired girl stops. Hey! Calling the group's attention. That's not a little weird. He pointed forward. The group would turn their gaze and see a group of 3 trucks. They had separated. One remained close to them, and the others had separated. Before we could even imagine what was going to happen, the truck doors opened, and several men jumped out. All of them with guns. And without wasting any time, they started shooting. Ah! They were the screams of all the people. Tobio, quick! Stop them now! After his shout, the group quickly reacted. The blonde had frozen several of the armed men, to the surprise of a handful of people still there. But when the woman wasn't looking, other men appeared behind her. Damn! He cursed for his recent carelessness. The men had started shooting at him. He knew exactly that it was already too late to do anything. But the bullets were held back by a dark wolf. What the devil? The soldiers screamed, and the wolf leaped at them. Seeing the attack, they quickly began shooting at it. Lavinia-chan, are you okay? The purple-haired woman asked. Lavinia, yes, Penemu-san. I was only distracted for a moment, she replied, watching as the soldiers were already reduced. Ugh, how great what we achieved for everyone, said the other boy in the group. Tobio had also joined the group as they looked at the soldiers lying unconscious on the ground, along with a few wounded ones. Tobio, what was all that about? He asked, looking at them. I don't know, but it was definitely something strange, tell me. Bang! Bang! Tobio. Koki! He shouted as he ran to help his friend who was shot twice in the back. In the chest. Bang! 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 The shots were easily repelled by a small wall of ice. Thanks to Lavinia, who used her sacred gears. Tobio. Koki! Resist, friend, resist! They shouted while holding their hands over the holes where the bullets hit them, thus preventing them from losing blood. Penemu, Lavinia, can you see it? Penemu asked, looking at the aforementioned who denied. TSK. This is wrong. Azazel had reported that a group of supernatural beings was gathering in this place, and the only thing we found was nothing, he said while observing the buildings. Koki. To Tobio, he could hardly speak due to the large amount of blood he was losing. Tobio. Shut up, idiot, don't talk, he said while putting pressure on the wound. Koki, GH. Friend, I think I can't get out of this, he said while looking at Tobio. Tobio! Jean! Track him! He ordered. For his part, the wolf simply disappeared into the shadows. Penemu. I already found him. He's in that building, he pointed at the fall, but several more shots were heard. Tobio, upon seeing the building, quickly grabbed Lavinia and ordered her to stay while he began to run towards that building. Penemu, Tobio, wait! She shouted, but it was too late, damn. I'll call Azazel to bring reinforcements, and even a doctor. She quickly made a magic circle appear in her radio. Tobio started up the building's stairs. He dodged several shots. But the wolf had appeared, and it transformed into a sword, as well as Tobio. And the one who had wounded his friend were climbing to the roof of the building, until the shooter had already left. Tobio too. And without wasting another second, he grabbed a lid and threw it with all his might at his enemy, who had his back turned. And just at that very moment, that guy turned around where he had caught the lid, which Tobio had thrown so easily, and he saw that his hair was medium-length brown, shoulder-length. His right arm was completely mechanical. His face was covered up to his nose, leaving only his eyes visible. They both looked at each other. But just as Tobio was about to speak, the man threw the lid back at him with even greater force, causing Tobio to catch it, but he took several steps back. Tobio. GH. Letting out a small groan of pain. He looked back to the front and saw that there was no one. Elsewhere, Inframundo Hospital Citri, quickly. A group of nurses entered with a stretcher towards a room where Koki Samejima was being treated. Meanwhile, in the hospital hallway, Tobio Accused and the Slash Dog team were sitting in one of the waiting chairs. Penemu was also standing next to a tall, thin man with black hair and blonde streaks. He was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, waiting for news. Penemu was standing opposite that man, also leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Then a doctor comes out of the room. Tobio was the first to confront the doctor. Tobio, and Doc, how is Koki feeling? I asked while the rest also came closer to hear the news. Doc, this is a tough one to say. But patient Koki. He's in an indefinite coma after this revelation. Everyone there was shocked to hear the news. How is that possible, Doc? It was just an ordinary bullet that hit him, the man said, looking at Doc. Doc, that's why. The bullets that pierced him weren't normal. They were special bullets capable of killing supernatural beings. Especially demons, angels, and fallen demons. Azazel-sama, what Doc said made everyone look at him as if he told the best joke of their lives. Though luckily they managed to bring him back just in time, since his lungs were practically burned. And he's most likely dead there from blood loss or unable to breathe. After that, a deep silence fell over the entire room. Slash Dog's team entered, along with Azazel and Penemu. They saw him lying there on a stretcher full of tubes all over his face, while his heart machine was still working. No one could say or do anything when they saw their best friend's condition. Only Tobio clenched his fists in frustration and anger at seeing him like that. Chapter 2. Human World City of Angels, the City of Los Angeles. It was nighttime, and in a large, rather rustic building. Inside the building, in the hallways, stood a beautiful woman. She had long, purple hair and purple eyes. She had a slender figure and wore an aristocratic-style dress consisting of a fine red gown and a white cloth wrapped around her arms. She had large breasts. He walked very calmly toward a specific office. And then he opened the door to enter a room full of dead people. "It's me," he said from the intercom in his ear. "If they're all already dead," taking a folder from the small table, "and I have the files you asked for. I'll be back at the base soon." "Yes, sir." "Hail Hydra." Black Dog Bar. At the bar where Tobio Ex-Hyoudou currently works, he was sitting on one of the shelves, his gaze fixed solely on the empty glass in his hand. Next to his hand was an almost empty bottle of alcohol. "Toby," said a female voice walking towards Tobio Ex-Hyoudou and then hugged him from behind. "Tobio." Lavinia, without looking at her, he spoke to her. "Do you think it's my fault that this happened to Koki?" Lavinia just hugged him tighter, and then just gave him a little kiss on his cheek. "Lavinia, I don't think it's your fault, Toby. Everything happened too fast, just like that day. We couldn't do anything to help him." She spoke with melancholy, recalling a certain event. As Tobio was about to answer, the bar door opened. There they saw three very beautiful women enter. The first was a beautiful young woman in her 20s with long, wavy, cherry blossom hair and two horns protruding from her head. She wore a high-cut formal dress with high slits and had a well-endowed bust and a slim waist. The other was a beautiful young woman with long eyelashes, white skin, red eyes, bright pink lips, and a voluptuous, toned body. She had long, silver hair. She was wearing an academy outfit. And finally, the last girl is a beautiful young woman, taller and more voluptuous. She has green hair and heterochromatic eyes. Her left eye is gold, while her right eye is green. She wears a black dress that leaves her body exposed and a white fur scarf wrapped around her arms, which is tucked into her white elbow gloves. She also wears black stockings and black high heels. "Lavinia, Roygun-chan, Ain-chan and Elter-chan, what are you doing here?" she asked, looking at them. "Elter, we heard what happened from Azazel, and we wanted to come help you." The green-haired girl spoke calmly. "And we also wanted to take a break from work." The girls approached and then patted Tobio on the back, wanting to sit on the vacant benches. "Roygun, I know this is hard for you, Tobio. But you must have faith. Koki is someone tough to beat. And he'll wake up," she said calmly and sympathetically. "Tobio, thanks Roygun," he said as he put down his glass and then stood up. "If you excuse me, girls, I'll go to sleep." Then he just withdrew and left there, leaving Lavinia with the other girls who, upon seeing him leave, just sighed while Lavinia looked at him with concern. "Ain, you shouldn't worry, Lavinia. He'll be fine." The silver-haired girl spoke for the first time. Lavinia nodded and then began servilely serving each of the girls a few drinks. And serving herself. And settling in to drink with them. "Lavinia, you girls know something about this," she'd say, looking at them, "about this new group?" "Roygun, not long, Lavinia. It was assumed that there was a large group of demons in that place, but when the reinforcements arrived, the only thing that was missing was a trace of any supernatural being," Roygun commented, looking at the cup. "Lavinia, and what about those humans?" I asked. "Elter, they're a terrorist group called Hydra," she said, taking a sip. "The only thing we know about them is nothing, and the information we tried to get from the humans was impossible. They only gave their name, and then simply committed suicide." She clenched her fist slightly. "Ain, now we don't just have problems with the terrorist group armed by that bastard. Now we have a new enemy to worry about. If only he were here, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess here." "I speak with sadness, Roygun." Elter and Lavinia nodded in understanding, although Roygun. He reached for his chest and then a heart-shaped chain. "Roygun, Issei," he said sadly, "Human World North Pole. In the deep, cold snow, the temperature was 46.2 degrees Celsius, a rather low temperature. In the sky, a helicopter was hovering over the entire place. It then began to descend into what looked like a base. As the helicopter finished descending, it opened its doors. From there, a figure emerged, wearing a large coat like windshield glasses. He then began walking toward one of the doors. Upon entering the building, she began to take off her coat and begin walking through the complex. Every hallway was filled with people in suits and armed with weapons. She ignored most of them and simply entered an office. "You're here, Yuriko," said a male voice sitting in a chair. "Yuriko, here it is," throwing a folder full of documents on the desk. "It has information on everything you were asking for," she said without much importance. "I see," the man said as he looked at the files. "You've certainly done a great job." The man would leave the carpe back on his desk. "Okay, Yuriko, you can leave right now. My people will take care of the rest." "Yuriko, I want to know something about him. Where is he?" I ask. You're talking about Issei. He's currently in Kyoto City on a mission. Don't worry, the first pieces of Plan 1 are already in motion, Yuriko. The man smiled. "Yuriko, understood, sir, I'll leave then." She bowed slightly and then left. Kuoh City Kuoh Academy. At the prestigious Kuoh Academy, a faction meeting was taking place, and that would be the report that Azazel gave me, said a beautiful woman with green hair and eyes of different colors. In the surrounding room, there was a huge table. The current Mao were being escorted, along with the new leader of heaven, as well as the fallen and Asgard. I see, without a doubt now we not only have another problem to deal with Isaac, but we also have a problem with a group of armed terrorists called Hydra. This time a woman with purple hair and red eyes who was standing with her legs crossed spoke. "Penemu is right. This is getting out of hand, and we need to be united more than ever this time." A white-haired man spoke up. "Metratone, do you know if there's any news about yokais?" asked a woman who was next to the green-haired girl. Metratone, "No, we haven't discovered anything yet, Roigun-san. The only thing I knew was that the yokai are having their own civil war against other yokai. Since right now Yasaka-sama is dealing with the revolution that her daughter Kuoh is making. Therefore, we won't have any support from them," Metratone informed. "Roigun, do you have anything to contribute, Sona?" Roigun asked, looking at the aforementioned. "Sona, no, nothing," Lucifer-sama said, the black-haired girl who was behind him, her entourage. "Roigun, okay, then the meeting is over. You may leave." With that, the other leaders left the place, leaving only Roigun and the two Maos who were there. "You may leave too, girls." "Sona, no, Roigun-san, in fact I think I have an idea," she said while adjusting her glasses. "Roigun, what kind of idea?" I asked. Sona would look at the green-haired woman who nodded. "Sona, a new group against the XD terrorists." A deep silence fell in the meeting room. Now a new generation of heroes was about to emerge. Kyoto. A large cargo truck was moving down the city street. It slowly began to slow down. It then made a short detour through a large temple filled with guards who were all staring at it. Curious, the truck stopped in front of the temple. The guards were watching the truck. A man walked up to the window and knocked 3 times. "Olhigan Kanai." Blam! The man was shot in the head where the guards were poised to attack. 3 cars appeared out of nowhere, and then they crashed into the gates. Boom! The cars explored, pulling open the front door. As the back of the truck slowly began to appear, a figure appeared. His left arm was completely metallic. His hair was medium-length brown. On his right arm, he held an M16 with a grenade launcher. His face was covered from his mouth to his nose with a mask. He was wearing combat gear, and behind him was a large group of soldiers. They were behind him. Go ahead by Hydra. Hail Hydra. Chapter 3. Penemu. I'll see what I can do. After Penemu left the room, Barakiel and Azazel remained, and they did not say a word. "Azazel, are you sure you want to send her?" Azazel would say, looking at Shimasai. "Shimasai, if it's our best option to help in this attack." Kyoto. Boom! The door leading to the room where Yasaka was located had been destroyed, and the chestnut-haired man entered. He was carrying his M16 in his right hand, while in his left hand, he was carrying one of the soldiers Yasaka had sent. Throwing the body to the ground, still alive, he pulled out a 9mm Glock. Then he shot yokais all over the body several times, killing them. As he put his pistol away, he looked straight ahead and saw that no one was there. He placed his left hand towards the front of his M16 and began to walk slowly. As he walked inside and outside, the gunshots were heard, and it was quite difficult to hear. A noise stopped right in the middle of the place. He closed his eyes slightly. Then he opened them again, and he spun back and placed his M16 as a shield, blocking an attack from behind him. Clan! The metallic sound rang out where the brown-haired man saw Yasaka in front of him, who was holding the katana in his hand and had his ears visible. Yasaka would retreat and charge at the brown-haired man again. Ready to stab the brown-haired man, she was greatly surprised to see how he had parried her attack with his mechanical hand. Yasaka, how? The brown-haired man didn't respond and took the katana out of his hand and in a quick movement took out his Glock. Bang! Yasaka was shot in the knee and fell to the ground. In front of the soldier. Before she could say anything, she received a powerful blow to the head and was knocked out. A group of soldiers entered the place with a container and looked at the chestnut tree. Take her away, he ordered. The soldiers would take it, and then place it in the container. Meanwhile, the brown-haired man took his M16. He then started walking toward the exit. Sir, we received a report. There's a group of fallen angels there, along with sacred gear users. They came to arrest us, said one of the soldiers. Tell everyone to fall back and return to base, the chestnut tree would say. Understood, sir. The soldier would withdraw. Outside the temple, the Slash Dog team was at the back of the temple. They were Tobio Ekyus and Lavinia Rennie. Both were ready to enter. Bang! Bang! Several gunshots came from the top of the building, causing Tobio and Lavinia to quickly duck. Lavinia then created an ice shield, preventing the bullets from harming her. Tobio quickly looked at him and saw him coming down from the roof and starting to walk towards where they were. Tobio, you equals would say, looking at him as he stood up, and Jean stood next to him letting out a growl. Lavinia. Toby equals, she said as she stood next to him. Tobio. Lavinia, go and help the others. I'll take care of him equals, he said while looking at the brown-haired boy. Lavinia, unsure of the order her captain had given her, settled her gaze on the brown-haired man standing in front of her. She wanted to sense his aura, but something was preventing her from sensing anything. And if nothing else, she felt a strange, familiar sensation just looking at him. The brown-haired man, for his part, threw his M16 to the side and continued looking at Tobio while he took out a combat knife. Lavinia, it's okay, Toby. I trust you. She started running past the chestnut tree. They both stared at each other for a few minutes. Eye to eye, then Lavinia walked on without looking back. I couldn't, come on, let's have fun. Having a small headache, the brown-haired man ignored that feeling and looked at Tobio and the dog. Tobio, let's get this over with last time equals as he stood guard. A battle was about to begin. Tobio was determined to defeat this man at all costs. He didn't know that this fight would hold surprises and that a familiar face would reappear. Chapter 4. Underworld Forest of Familiars. A magic circle appeared from where Penemu emerged, accompanied by none other than Ain. Ain, are you sure you want to do this, Penemu? Equals, the girl asked, looking at the aforementioned. Penemu, believe me, Ain-chan. I don't want to talk to her either. But it's the only option we have right now. Equals, Penemu started walking, followed by Ain. Ain, you think she'll help us? I mean, she was known only for never interfering in a battle. And the other factions don't care about her. Ain said as she walked next to Penemu. Penemu, you're right about that, Ain. But there's something she and I have in common, equals, Penemu would say while she stopped in front of a cave just like Ain. Ain, and what would that be? Equals, I ask. Penemu, both of us. We hate the same dragon, human world Kyoto. Tobio stared sternly at the brown-haired man standing in front of him. He only had a knife in his right hand. Tobio's dog, Jean, was ready to pounce. Tobio, Jean now! Equals, he shouted, giving the order. Jean ran toward the brunette, who raised an eyebrow in curiosity at this attack. He reacted quickly when he saw how Jean had transformed into a huge wolf. He rolled on the ground, dodging Jean, who sped past him. But Tobio had also launched himself at him, and with some luck, the brunette used his metallic arm as a shield, causing him to retreat a few meters. Tobio felt a sharp pain in his leg after kicking him. But he couldn't do anything but grit his teeth and attack again, along with Jean. Meanwhile, the brunette was already on high guard. He dodged Jin's second attack and launched a punch at Tobio, who placed his left arm in front of him. He grabbed the brunette's left arm. But he didn't realize that the brunette had landed a strong blow to his abdomen with his metallic arm, being thrown several meters back. And spitting blood, Tobio quickly looked forward and saw how Jean was now attacking the brown-haired boy. Tobio, TSK. Letting out a snap of annoyance, He stood up and launched another attack at the brown-haired man. Seeing his intentions, the soldier grabbed Jean by the snout with his metal arm and threw him toward Tobio, who, upon seeing Jean, caught him. But it was his carelessness. The soldier landed a massive blow to Tobio's face with his normal arm, causing Tobio to drop Jean. Jean then kicked him. The soldier began attacking Tobio with his knife, but Tobio dodged and blocked the attacks. He held his knife in the air for a few minutes. It twirled. The soldier switched hands, placing it on his metal arm. He tried to stab Tobio again, but Tobio put both hands out, blocking the attack and finally being able to counterattack the soldier. He landed a few blows to his face and placed his palm on the soldier's chest. Tobio landed a strong blow that knocked him flying, causing the soldier to crash into the wall and fall to his knees. "Tobio! Jean!" Tobio shouted as the wolf stood next to him. "I sing for the death of 1,000 humans. I celebrate the death of 1,000 goblins. The name submerged in total darkness, that of the god of imitation who moves through the polar night. You will perish by my own black sword. For something absurd, the god, creator of the deformed, perfectus tenebri lycaon et fortis densus lelaps." Now Toby was wearing a large suit of armor. In the form of a wolf, however, the soldier, seeing him, placed his guard high. "Tobio, now let's get this over with." Tobio now launched himself with greater speed towards the soldier. Seeing how fast the soldier was moving, Tobio used his metal arm as a shield and pushed Tobio back several meters without losing another second. He launched himself at the soldier again, but this time Tobio didn't expect the soldier to have moved at such great speed that he did, and received a massive blow to the face. A little dazed, Tobio began receiving multiple blows all over his body, from his ribs to his abdomen. And to top it all off, the soldier, with his metal arm, delivered a powerful blow to Tobio's face, sending him flying several meters. On the other side of Kyoto, the Hydra soldiers were holding back all the yokai who approached them. But suddenly, a great cold began to hit the place, and suddenly, a small group of soldiers were frozen. "What the devil?" most of them screamed, only to be frozen. Quickly, the others who weren't frozen yet tried to react, but were killed by the yokai behind them. When the yokai saw who had come to help them, they saw a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing a magician's outfit. She was walking towards Asia. A yokai stands in front of the entire group. "Lavinia, I'm Lavinia Rennie, one of Gregory's agents. We're their reinforcements," said the magician seriously, looking at the yokai. "Before the yokai leader, I asked something." He received a powerful shot to the head. He fell to the ground dead. Lavinia quickly created an ice shield while the other yokai were killed. Lavinia, TSK. Clicking her tongue in annoyance, she faced the fact that she was cornered by several Hydra soldiers. She immediately began to look for any place to hide. In the place, several bombs fell right next to her, and upon seeing them, she opened her eyes in surprise. Boom! A huge explosion erupted at the scene. Hydra soldiers began to inch closer to the blast site to check if anyone was still alive. The smoke screen was slowly dissipating. And at that very moment, several of the soldiers were brutally shoveled with ice stakes. And others were frozen. "Fire!" The soldiers began firing toward the smoke screen. But even so, a large group of soldiers were frozen and killed. Lavinia was protected by a small wall of ice around her. She was very lucky to have reacted in time and created a wall of ice. Even so, she couldn't avoid being seriously injured. "Lavinia, damn, there are too many of them," she would say, looking at the sky, activating her sacred gears again. But before he could attack again, something caught his attention. "Ah, kill her!" The gunshots and the soldiers' terrified screams began to draw the mage's attention. Seeing that he was no longer attacking her, she wanted to see who it was. But she still didn't let her guard down for a moment. Leaving the safe place, she saw several dead bodies. Some lay burned with blue fire. Something strange for her. "I see you are one of Gregory's agents. Or am I mistaken?" A voice sounded behind Rennie. She quickly turned around and saw a pair of sky blue hair. Largo was a rather beautiful woman. She was wearing a suit that looked like a general's. Her eyes were blue, and her gaze was completely hostile toward her. "Lavinia, yes, I'm Rennie Lavinia, member of the Slash Dog team, and one of Gregory's agents." "And you are?" Equals, she answered and asked, looking at the woman. I am Tiamat, the Dragon Queen of Karma, replied the woman now known as Tiamat, with her arms crossed. Just as Lavinia was about to ask something, she saw Tiamat move at great speed toward her. Tiamat tried to defend herself, but her grip stopped. Tiamat's fist passed by the side of her face, causing Lavinia to turn around and see one of the Hydra soldiers. He fell to the ground dead. Lavinia, thank you, equals, she would say, looking at the body. For her part, Tiamat snorted. And then she began walking toward the temple, leaving Lavinia completely dubious about her attitude toward her. But he couldn't continue with his thoughts until he heard a loud explosion from the other side where Tobio was. Without wasting any time, he started running in the direction Tiamat was also going, with Tobio. Tobio and the soldier were both standing there staring at each other. Tobio was completely beaten up, as was the soldier. But the soldier seemed to be as good as new since he wasn't sweating. Meanwhile, Tobio wiped the blood from his nose. They both lunged at each other again. The soldier, with his metal arm, launched a direct punch at Tobio, who responded in kind. They both punched each other at the same time. Taking a few steps back, they both lunged back and clashed fists. Tobio felt a sharp pain throughout his arm. But he didn't think much of it, and began throwing several punches, just like the soldier. Exchanging blows at high speed, he and the soldier were on a completely different level. But unfortunately for Tobio, his body began to feel very fatigued. He was already well aware of this, and he began cursing himself inwardly. But he still didn't stop throwing punches. This time, the soldier changed his stance to a boxer's. He threw several hooks, which were blocked by Tobio. Tobio then threw a kick, but the soldier had caught him with his metallic arm and then thrown him. Landing on his feet, Tobio looked at the soldier, who grabbed a knife from the ground and then began to swing it. Tobio had his guard up, ready to attack, but the soldier dodged a blow from his back and then did a backflip, dodging an ice attack from Lavinia, Rennie, and Tiamat. Lavinia, Toby! Equals, she shouted as she ran towards Tobio. For her part, Tiamat stood opposite the soldier. She released her aura while part of her body transformed into a reticule. But before she could attack, Tobio positioned himself next to her, along with Lavinia. Tiamat said nothing more and launched herself at great speed toward the soldier. He crossed his arms, taking the blow and being pushed away. The two began to face each other. Tiamat would launch a fiery attack from her mouth. But the soldier would move quickly and deliver a powerful blow to her face, causing her to retreat. Tobio Ex-Hyoudou appeared right behind Tiamat. The soldier, seeing him, couldn't dodge the direct blow to his face, causing his mask to begin to tear. Without waiting any longer, Tobio went all in and began brutally beating the soldier. The soldier tried his best to block the attacks, but it was impossible. Each blow from Tobio was like a bomb that exploded the moment it hit him. The soldier fell to his knees, his hand on his stomach. Tobio threw a punch to his face, ready to knock him out. But just at that moment, the soldier caught the fist with his metal arm. Without a moment's hesitation, the soldier completely bent Tobio's wrist, causing him to fall to his knees. He began receiving a torrent of consecutive blows to his face. The part of his helmet that protected him had been destroyed, leaving his face completely vulnerable. While Tobio was receiving blows to the face, Tiamat and Lavinia took advantage of this and together attacked from long distance. Tiamat launched a powerful blue flame from her mouth, and the mage launched several ice magic attacks. The soldier, seeing the attack coming toward him, let go of Tobio, who fell to the ground with his face covered in blood, his nose broken, his eyes completely swollen, as were his cheeks, and his lips split. The soldier put his metal arm forward and opened his palm, and then what they heard left them all completely shocked. Divide, 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 and the attack that was sent towards him was completely disappeared. Tiamat, how is it possible that you use that damn ability? Equals, the dragon would say, surprised, looking at the soldier. Lavinia, they also have the powers of Vae-kun, equals, she said while looking at him. The soldier would look at both girls, and when he was about to go after them, Tobio, behind you, you idiot! Equals, Tobio said behind him, and the soldier turned around. I received a hard blow to the face that made me take several steps back. Tiamat and Lavinia stood next to Tobio, who was on his knees. Lavinia, Toby equals, she said, worried about Tobio. Tobio, I'm fine, don't worry equals, he would say while looking ahead. Splat! And then they saw the mask covering him begin to crumble. Little by little. And everyone, without exception, opened their eyes. Tiamat, no, I can be equals, she said, surprised. Lavinia, you equals, she couldn't articulate any words about what her eyes were seeing. Tobio didn't say anything. He just couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. His brown hair, those eyes. That face he'd known a few years before. He was a great, fun friend, a pervert who helped everyone. He had no doubts. Tobio, Issei? The soldier would look at his face. Who the hell is this Issei? Chapter 5. A deep silence fell over the meeting room. Among the factions was Mao Lucifer Roigun, who was silently weeping. So was Penemu, while Tiamat sat at one of the windows, looking out with a distressed expression, aware of everything that had happened in Kyoto. And Yasaka's disappearance, and now Kuoh, in charge of the Yukai alongside her little brother. Who would be the next king of the Yukai? While the Dog team was also there except for Tobio Accused, who was in the hospital sleeping because his face was completely destroyed. No one knew what to do as they stared into the hologram. The one who was once considered a hero to children. A great boyfriend-lover friend. Sighing, things started to get more complicated than they already were, a muscular brown-haired man would say. Arms crossed, looking at the hologram. Sona, you're right, Serorg, she would say with a serious expression looking at the hologram. Lavinia, you said something else about the attack. Can you repeat it, please? Lavinia, yes, nodded because what we discovered in our confrontation with Issei. We realized that he has no memory of who he was before or even knows his real name. Another silence fell over the meeting room. Things had gotten more complicated than they already were. Now they had no one but the enemy. The one who had brought down the previous faction leaders. Now they had to deal with a former friend-lover-boyfriend hero who had once been theirs. Things in the supernatural world had turned upside down. North Pole Hydra's base of operations. In a laboratory there were two people in white coats walking towards a specific place. I see. It seems your memories are coming back. A beautiful woman with white hair and dull golden eyes would say. Arriving at a particular room, she had opened the door to find Issei standing there, wearing only combat pants and boots. I see you're a bit confused, right? She came closer and then sat on the bed next to him. Issei. They called me Issei, looking at his hand. I feel like I know them, but shhhh. The woman would touch the brunette's lips to silence him. Listen to me. We have to do this. You know those memories are more than just a function you have because of the machine. You are Bucky. A super soldier capable of defeating those repugnant beings, she would say, touching his right cheek. Come on, let's go. Getting into skin. Bucky Issei would start walking with her through the halls of the place. Many scientists saw her, and they set their sights on the soldier. Upon reaching the room, there was some kind of machine there. Bucky walked toward the machine. He lay down while several scientists began to strap him in. Then they lowered a helmet that covered even the part of his eyes. For years ago, when we found you, you were completely wounded in the cold snow. The woman would begin to remember the first time she saw Issei. You are barely a 20-year-old teenager. And there was no trace on the net about you. And your incredible magical power that emanated. You were the ideal. Memories of how they managed to erase the chestnut's memory. The wounded man couldn't do anything else. We implanted serums in you to make you fit into our weapon. And we made you completely loyal to us. And we trained you in hand-to-hand combat and with weapons of any kind. The machine began to glow, and a loud scream came from Issei's mouth. The woman put on a smile. You are the perfect soldier. The machine stopped glowing. And then the other scientists quickly began to free the brunette, who quickly stood up and looked directly at the woman. So, how are you feeling now? I would ask. Bucky, I feel much better now. Standing up, he would answer. The woman smiled and nodded. Okay, let's go, we have things to do. Turning around, she began to walk, followed by the brunette. 2 days later, Underworld Castle Belphegor. In the castle of the current Mao Lucifer, there was a group of people. Gathered together were the leaders of their respective factions. Roigun, as you may know, it was more than 2 years ago. We suffered countless casualties due to the influence of the previous faction leaders. Mentioning what had happened years ago, many of the young people grimaced in clear disgust. After they betrayed our hero, and the birth of the children, many things have changed. One of them was the terrorist group led by Issei Ex-Hyoudou, who had influenced the entire alliance. We've done everything possible to stop them, but their powers are complemented by those of Issei Ex-Hyoudou. Closing his eyes, Sona, that caused many to distrust the current faction leaders. And then the coup d'état arose, where we, the current Mao, took the underworld by force and imprisoned a Sirzechs Lucifer, Grayfia Lucifuge, Seraphil Leviathan, Odin, to Tartarus and murdered the elders of the councils. A silence took over the room. Penemu, as you know, as do Gregory and Asgard. We have punished our respective traitors. We have taken the position of Shiasai and Gregory and Vidar in Asgard. Vidar, recounting what we just said. And after the complete dismantling of the former DXD team, leaving no trace of those former members. Few have remained to help us. Guys, please take the lead. Vidar stepped aside. And there they saw the group who were still helping. A girl with beautiful purple hair, orange eyes, a pretty face, and pale skin, as well as large breasts marked on her clothing. She was wearing what appeared to be a noblewoman's gown with slits, exposing her cleavage, and a short skirt. The other woman looked a little more mature. She had long black hair and hazel eyes with cat-like pupils. Her attire consisted of a black kimono, a yellow sash, a set of gold beads, and an elaborately decorated headband. The interior of the kimono was red and open at the shoulders, revealing her large breasts. Her most distinctive features were her cat ears and 3 tails. The last of the 3-woman group was a woman of equal maturity to the second. She had long, silvery white hair and blue eyes. Her normal attire is the Valkyrie armor set, consisting of a white breastplate with gold and light blue accents and matching fingerless gauntlets, boots, hip guards, and wing-shaped hair clips. She also wears a black leotard under her breastplate, black thigh-high stockings, and a pale blue cloth wrap under the hip guards, all of which are lined with pink laces. Roygun approached the group of 3 girls. Upon seeing her, they smiled at her in a friendly manner, and she returned the gesture. Roygun, they are the only people who helped us in that coup against the former faction leaders. Kuroka Tujo, Ross Wise and the descendant of the Mao Leviathan, and also wielder of the Longinus Nerid Kyrie Ingviled Leviathan, she announced. Most of the room opened their eyes in incredible surprise, recognizing the still wives of the former hero Hyoudou Issei. And applause began to resonate throughout the room, where the girls simply bowed. On one side, a silver-haired boy stood with his arms crossed, staring at the group of girls. His arms tightened around his chest. Roygun, now drawing everyone's attention, the reason we've invited you to this meeting is because we want to form a new anti-terrorist group. After this announcement, many in the room were completely surprised. Rosswise stood in front of Roygun and spoke. Rosswise, we've been through a lot in these years. Since that day. And our own internal wars against those we once trusted. And today, what was once DXD, a group that gave hope to the inhabitants of ending the terrorist group released by Rizavin Levon Lucifer and his followers, and managing to seal the beast of the Triaxa apocalypse. I would say, recounting everything they had lived through, Kuroka was the one who also placed herself in front. Kuroka, it's time to leave the past in the past, Naya, and start a new future, Naya. One where we give hope to those who can't fight, Naya, Ingviled, and above all, have a future. So that we can finally put our differences aside and become just one faction again. Like going back several millennia before the fall of the original Lucifer. Let's create a future. Yes. Elter would look at the group of girls, and they would do the same. And she would stand at the front. Elter, as the new Mao Belzebub, officially declared the new anti-terrorism group. Nexus, a new anti-terrorist group had been formed. A new generation of heroes had begun to emerge, and soon they would give the people a glimmer of hope. Chapter 6. City of Kuoh Hyoudou Mansion. In the large Hyoudou residential complex, there was an elderly, brown-haired couple. They were sitting on sofas, holding hands. The television was on showing the terrorist attack in Kyoto. Around the house were several photo frames of the two adults with two brown-haired children, both of them hugging each other. Smiling, the man turned off the television and stood up. "Okay, honey. I'm going to work now," the brown-haired man said to his wife. "Goro, be careful." "Yes," the brown-haired woman said with concern. "Goro, smiles, calm down, Mickey, I'll be fine." Walking towards the door and looking at his wife once more. "See you, love." After he left the house, the home fell into a deep silence. Oba-san, a boy with brown hair with blonde streaks, had come down the stairs. "Mickey, what's going on now, Nick?" I'd ask, looking at her grandson. "Nick, Asia Oka-san had another nightmare." Mickey puts on a sad expression and then stands up and walks towards the boy. "Mickey, calm down, Nick. Why don't you go with your brothers to play outside?" she would say with a smile as the boy nodded and then went outside. Mickey would look at a picture where there was only one Issei, about 14 years old, holding a sign that said "Happy Birthday." With a sad expression, she touched the picture. "Mickey, Issei-kun, forgive me for not being a good mother," she would say in a whisper. Kuoh Center. In the center of Kuoh City, Goro was driving his car. He was currently stopped at a red light, and a police car parked right next to him. Goro looked to his side and saw the officers, who were watching him. "Goro, officers," he said, looking back ahead. The light turned green, and the police car honked its horn before moving. Goro started driving forward, and at that very moment, a police patrol car pulled up. It crashed into Goro's car, causing him to receive a powerful blow to the head. Then more police cars appeared and crashed into Goro's car again. A black pickup truck appeared, and a group of SWAT officers got out, every single one of them. They came down with large, high-caliber weapons. Just as the police officers got out and pointed their weapons, blam! Bang! Everyone started shooting at Goro's car. He ducked as the bullets began to pierce through the glass, shattering it. Grabbing the handlebars with both hands, Goro slammed the accelerator and crashed the police car, moving it forward, shifting into reverse. Then, putting the car in fourth, it sped forward as officers began shooting at him from a distance. Panicking, he pulled out his phone and began searching for a specific number. While looking at the road, he saw it, a grown man wearing a tight-fitting soldier's suit. In his metal arm, he was carrying a gun with a disc attached to it. "Goro, what?" At that, the soldier pointed his gun at him, and the disc shot out, skittering along the ground and then landing right under the car. Boom! The rear of the car had exploded. The rear end lifted up, and the soldier dodged to the side to avoid the impact, causing the car to overturn. Looking at the upturned car, the soldier pulled a Glock from his pocket and started walking toward the car. Goro, for his part, was disoriented. And little by little, his vision became a little clearer. Turning his face to the side, he saw the soldier walking toward him, trying to do whatever he could to free himself. The soldier ripped open the door with his metal arm and threw him away. Goro would look at the soldier, who was wearing a mask that covered his mouth and a pair of glasses. Raising both hands, Goro would look at the soldier. The soldier pointed the 9mm Glock at him. "Goro, PL please P." Bang! Smoke billowed from the front of the soldier's weapon. Meanwhile, Goro had a hole in his head. Turning around, he started walking away, then turned around and looked directly at a video camera. He then looked straight ahead and got into a black pickup truck. 3 days later, Underworld. "So that's what happened," a black-haired woman said. "So it seems," Naya, a girl with cat features, would say. In the small room were none other than Rosswise, Kuroka Invilg, Tobio, and Sona Citri, also known as the Mao Leviathan. "Tobio, things got more complicated," I would say seriously while looking through the files. "Kuroka, there are several traitors mixed up in the factions." "Naya, Rosswise, that bastard Isaac. He's still nowhere to be seen." "I'm talking idly." "Invilg, there's another problem. 3 days ago Hydra attacked again. But their target was Issei Ex-Hyoudou." Closing his eyes slightly. "It seems very strange to me that Alan attacked Goro. Rosswise, that damn old man. He deserves it." Spitting those words out, Rosswise mentioned, "Kuroka, I agree with Ross-chi, Naya, that decrepit old man. He deserved more than a quick death." Naya. Kuroka would agree with the Valkyrie. "Tobio, hey, you definitely don't like her anymore, eh, Kuroka?" he commented with a smile. And then he put on a more serious expression. "Sona-san, tell me something." "Sona, Yes, Tobio? Tobio, it's about him. We'll keep it a secret. To them. He would say, looking at Rosswise, Kuroka, and Invilg, who were on the other side talking to each other. Sona, it's best to keep it a secret for now. How did Roygun do it? She answers, and Tobio nods. At that, a magic circle formed on her right side, and Sona, Rosswise, along with Kuroka and Invilg, approached the table again and, like Tobio, looked at Sona, who had a serious expression on her face. After that, he made the magic circle disappear. And he would look at Tobio. Sona, Tobio, the appeared. Upon mentioning the words, the Tobio nodded. Ross, Kuroka, Invilg. I want you to go to heaven and deliver a message to Azrael. It's urgent. He said seriously while the girls nodded and then disappeared in a magic circle. Tobio, I'll take care of Issei. But a small doubt forms on Tobio's face. What would happen if Issei can no longer recover his memories? Sona remained silent for a moment. Tobio had a point. What would happen if he could no longer recover his memories? She couldn't force him to return and change his memories. That would be wrong. And it's forbidden for demons to play with the minds of humans. Sona, sighed Tobio. If that happens, you already know what you have to do, she would say with an expression. Seriously. Tobio nodded and then left the place, leaving Sona alone, who leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling for a few minutes. Sona, I hope that never happens again, she would say in a whisper. Chapter 7. Underworld Tartarus. In the great depths of the pit, where the world's most dangerous souls and criminals were found. It was a valley filled with mountains and rocks. And it was located at the very bottom of the underworld. On one of the large mountains, a battered woman was found. She had black hair and violent eyes. She showed signs of having been sexually abused. Seraphil, a male voice said behind the woman, who still hadn't moved. He was a man in his early 20s. He had long red hair. He was quite thin, and you could see the bones of his slender body. Seraphil, he called her again, but nothing. She remained seated on the edge of the cliff, clutching her legs and trembling. Seeing her in such a state, the man simply turned around and walked toward the cave. Is Sirzechs still not reacting? A silver-haired woman with gray eyes would ask. No. Grayfia. Sirzechs' reply was short and simple. He was once called the most powerful demon in the underworld. I'd better talk to her. Sirzechs nodded, then lay down on the ground. I'll try to get some sleep, Sirzechs would say while Grayfia and goes with Seraphil. Human world Kuoh City? Several soldiers were in a building. Each and every one of them was armed, with every weapon they had at their disposal. Meanwhile, in a room, Issei stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the wall, staring at a man in front of him. The man standing in front of the chestnut tree was wearing a noble suit. He had several earrings in his left and right ears. He had gray hair, emerald eyes, and a neutral gaze with a small smile. And what do you think of Miss Yuriko's treatment? The man asked. Tell me something. Why does the greatest raiding game champion want to betray his own kind? Yuriko asked cautiously, looking at the man. Sigh, it's something simple. And I think I'm not the only one who wants that. He would look at Yuriko and then at Issei. I want to unite humanity. A deep, profound silence fell over the room. No one could say or do anything. Ha 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 ha! A laugh was heard behind everyone as a door opened and from there walked a woman, quite beautiful, with ash-colored hair and slanted golden eyes. Her clothing consisted of black armor. But look what the fly brought. The great Dihauser Belial. With a savage smile, the woman stood right in front of the man now known as Dihauser. The two of them locked gazes for a few minutes. Tensions began to rise, all over the place, causing Yuriko to back away. Instead, Issei pulled out a Glock, ready for anything. Boom! An explosion had rocked the building. And in a swift movement, Dihauser disappeared into a magic circle. The door was thrown open by a Hydra soldier. Mississippi. We're under attack from supernatural beings. Clicking her tongue, the gray-haired woman looked at Yuriko, who nodded and then looked at the brunette. Take care of them. Issei nodded and then started walking to the door. Then he left with the soldier. Yuriko. Yeah? I want you to prepare the troops. I'll personally take care of Dihauser Belial, the woman said seriously. Understood. Krom Kruch. Wings outside the building. A large group of fallen angels, along with several demons and a few Valkyries. They were attacking from the front, while a great rain began to fall from the sky. The chestnut-haired man had reached the front, and, seeing the large group of supernatural beings attacking them, he deployed his troops and grabbed his machine gun with a grenade launcher. Without wasting another minute, he began firing. Blank! Bang! Blank! He began firing huge shots, killing large numbers of demons, and some Valkyries, who used their Nordic magic to return the attack. Several soldiers began to deploy throughout the area. As they fired, several were dying due to the magical attacks. Meanwhile, several supernatural beings were killed with shots to the head. The bodies were killed instantly. Ah! Most of them screamed as they saw a gigantic black wolf appear out of nowhere and split a soldier in half. Issei, seeing this, quickly began shooting at it just as the wolf began making several zigzag movements, making it harder to shoot it. Kuoh, letting out a growl, the wolf stood a few feet in front of the chestnut tree, who, upon seeing him, pulled out his combat knife and placed his metal arm forward. His right leg was forward and his left leg back, his arms slightly bent. Ready to attack, just like the wolf, they both ran towards each other, where the black wolf let out a scream together. A great leap. Meanwhile, Issei stopped in his tracks and launched an attack with his hand where he held the knife. But the wolf bit his wrist, making a small dent. Issei quickly kicks him away, successfully getting the wolf to let go. But the damage was already done because the metal arm was noticeably covered in wires. Issei spun back. He dodged a powerful magical attack from Tobio Iku's. "Wow, you have good reflexes, Issei," Tobio said, looking at him. The brunette remained standing without even moving from his spot. Before the soldier could attack him, he was sent flying, crashing into a building, courtesy of a large hammer. A young man descended from the skies. He was tall and muscular, with long, reddish hair and yellow eyes, while his sclerae were completely black. He wore simple white tunics, a pair of belts with golden buckles around his waist, and golden greaves and booties. His hands were usually covered by his jarn grape. "Thor-sama?" Tobio spoke with clear surprise in his voice. You're Tobio Iku's, right?" The god of thunder asked as he took his hammer and placed it on his shoulders. Tobio nodded and then looked at the spot where Issei crashed into the wall. "Do you think he managed to resist that attack?" Looking at the place, Tobio asked, making Thor frown slightly. "Watch out," he would say while getting ready. "Here it comes," and from the rubble emerged Issei, with some marked wounds on his face. His suit somewhat destroyed, his metallic arm completely covered in several scratches. His gaze sharpened and his eyes took on a more subtle appearance. His pupils sharpened, and at great speed. Slightly surprising Tobio, Issei launched himself at them with his combat knife. Thor, seeing him coming, put on a slight smile and threw his hammer at the brunette. Seeing the hammer go against the Issei, he spun around on the ground. Dodging the attack, Thor raised his hand forward and the hammer returned to his hand. Looking at Issei, Thor began to walk towards him and stand in front of the soldier. "I hope you can entertain me." His arms were covered in electricity. Suddenly, the entire sky began to darken. Several thunderclaps began to sound throughout the area. Thor's aura began to overwhelm the entire place. Except for the brunette, who simply stood up and stared directly at the Norse god, Issei launched the first blow at Thor, who, upon seeing him, put his hammer to block the attack, which worked. But Issei lashed out with a powerful kick to the god's abdomen, pushing him away. Thor spat out a bit of saliva and then set his sights on the brown-haired man and then on Tobio Iku's, calling Tobio's attention. "Don't interfere in this battle." After that statement, Tobio opened his eyes slightly, and before answering, "I want to see with my own eyes the power of the one who was once considered a hero." His entire body was covered by lightning also. "I want to feel the adrenaline of battle again." And after that last statement, Tobio simply accepted. And he walked away from the combat zone. Thor, the most powerful Norse god of Asgard, also known as the Berserker of Thunder. The reason Tobio simply accepted was because he knew Thor was the only person capable of dealing with Issei. Despite not having the Bostigir yet in his possession, his fighting style was very different. And he still had superhuman strength. Unlike him, he was made of the flesh and blood of Great Red. and the powers of infinity. An existence totally forbidden in the supernatural world. So I was hoping Thor would be the only one to at least knock out Issei. For their part, both Thor and Issei were eyeing each other up. Thor, ready for combat, was the first to attack. Using his hammer, he launched a direct blow at the brunette. Issei, seeing the attack, moved several meters back, dodging it. Spinning on the ground, he launched a slash, still holding his knife. But Thor responded by launching another blow. This time, without using his hammer, to the brown-haired boy's surprise, who could do nothing but take the attack head-on and step back while holding his stomach. Thor twirled Mjolnir around, throwing it as lightning shot from his body and into the hammer, seeing the attack coming straight for Issei. With his good hand he was covered in scales as was much of his body and, boom! A great electrical explosion erupted across the battlefield. A massive tremor was also felt throughout the battle zone. Thor looked straight ahead and extended his hand forward, palm open. Mjolnir returned to his grasp. Looking at the human curtain, the smoke curtain slowly dissipated, revealing the brunette who was lying on the ground, with several wounds all over his body, holding what was left of his metal arm. While Thor looked at him, Turning around in surprise, he used his hammer, blocking a large attack that made him retreat several meters. Looking in front of him was a woman. This woman looked like a beautiful young woman. She had pale skin, golden eyes, and short, white blonde hair. She was wearing black armor and a strange, shining sword in her hand. She stood in front of the brunette. Thor was slightly surprised by the devastating blow to his arm as he parried the attack. His hands were still swaying from the attack of the mysterious woman who attacked him, apart from the violet flames that were surrounding him. Ignoring the Norse god Thor, she turned and looked at the brunette holding her metallic arm. Then she knelt down and touched his cheekbone. "Master." With clear affection in her voice, she began to touch the brown-haired boy's cheek. "Jalter, what are you doing here?" I asked while trying to get some air. "I felt you were in danger," she declared while looking into his eyes. "You better let me take care of him." Issei looked at her for a few seconds and then nodded to stand up. Jalter turned around and looked at the Norse god of thunder. "This girl is strong. Wow, this is getting very interesting." A strange smile appeared on the face of the Norse god. The two men stared at each other as Jalter covered his sword with purple fire, and Thor was covered in lightning. Across the Kuoh, Belial. He was sitting on a bench in Kuoh Park. Around him were large numbers of Hydra bodies, all dead, and no survivors. "You've arrived." Standing up, he would look in front of him. Krom Kruch. In front of him was a rather tall woman wearing armor with dragon-like features. A truly stunning body. She was also dressed in dark indigo and black armor with draconic features. The two men stared at each other as they released their auras. Krom Kruch's was black. Belial's was a slightly lighter color with some black highlights. A great battle was about to take place in two different parts. The Thunder Berserker would fight a strange girl named Jalter. Meanwhile, Belial, an ultimate class demon, would fight the most powerful evil dragon, the Crescent Circle Dragon. Chapter 8, Part 1. Jalter stared at the Norse god Thor in front of him. He was being covered in massive amounts of lightning. Jalter knew what he had to do right, and stopping him was no easy task. His sword was covered in fire as he began to take a few steps toward Thor. Seeing her coming, Thor tensed every muscle in his body. Without wasting any more time, they launched themselves at high speed. Without further ado, their weapons collided with each other, creating a large crater beneath them. Jalter's eyes flashed brightly. He threw several blows, each receiving the same response as Thor. The latter, who didn't waste a second, also charged forward. They were completely equal in speed and technique. But Thor clearly had a clear advantage, as he possessed far greater strength than Jalter. But Jalter made up for it with his agility and his superior combat technique. However, Thor also had combat technique. He threw his hammer at Jalter, who leaped high, and her sword was covered in fire. She launched a powerful magical attack, but it was easily blocked, creating another huge wave, destroying everything in its path, and forcing Issei to move away from the battlefield. Stepping back several meters, Jalter observed the spot where Thor was standing. "This will be harder than I thought," Jalter couldn't help but think as he looked at the spot where the Norse god of thunder was. Thor emerged from the smoke screen. He had a line of blood on his forehead. He looked directly at Jalter, who stood on high guard. Thor smiled and positioned his hammer as if he were going to throw it at Jalter. Seeing him, Jalter tensed all his muscles. "Let's go!" And letting out a great shout, Jalter launched herself at full speed towards the Norse god, who upon seeing her threw Mjolnir covered in lightning. But Jalter would jump dodging the attack. Being already anticipated by Thor, he moved at great speed while having his palms open, causing Mjolnir to quickly return to his hand. Jalter seeing Mjolnir return to its owner, she quickly runs to the side, dodging the attack. Thor took Mjolnir in his hand and gave a small jump with a spin. He threw a great blow, being that Jalter responded in the same way. Clank! All around them, a huge shock wave had been generated, destroying a large part of Kuoh's city. They both looked at each other directly in the eyes. Thor with an amused smile, while Jalter, he couldn't help but put on a sadistic smile. They were both having fun. Jalter shone his fire-covered sword. A powerful pillar of fire formed on the sword. Thor, seeing this, raised Mjolnir to the sky, and several bolts of lightning began to fall on the hammer. Raising his sword high, Jalter looked at Thor, who looked back. "Emperor's hammer!" Letting out a mighty shout, Thor pointed it at Jalter, and for a great and powerful moment, it was directed at Jalter. Purgatory! And responding in kind, Jalter made a large horizontal cut. Both attacks collided with each other, creating a huge explosion. It generated a huge light throughout the entire space, visible to everyone present, taking everything in its path and destroying everything around it. A huge crater formed all around. The place was covered in fire, and with some sparks of lightning. Silence was the only thing that reigned. As the smoke screen slowly dissipated, footsteps began to be heard. At the other end, Mjolnir could be seen, covered in lightning. At his side, a pair of winged boots were raised to his shoulder. Thor looked in front of him where the fire was. From there, a figure appeared. It was called Jalter. "Joe." Thor couldn't help but smile. "You're quite a strong person, you're definitely a great rival." His eyes shone. "Tsk, you're a pain, Thunder God Thor." Jalter replied with clear annoyance as part of his armor cracked. "Tell me something." Drawing Jalter's attention. "That sword?" Pointing at the sword Jalter had in his hands. "Isn't that the sword of the Maid of Orleans?" Thor couldn't help but ask. Jalter stared at his sword for a few minutes. And then he couldn't help but smile. Then he stabbed it into the ground. "You're smarter than I thought." I look at the sword. "That's right, this sword is the Jeanne d'Arc. Also like Joan of Arc." Thor was slightly surprised by this revelation. He knew well that there was a descendant of Joan of Arc, who is now part of the faction of heroes being led by Hydra. "I see," was the only thing that came out of his mouth, looking at the woman who smiled sadistically at him. "Before we continue with our fight, I want to ask you a question." Slightly surprised, Jalter looked at the Norse god. She saw no trace of lies in his words, so she nodded. "Well, tell me, what is your goal? Why are you doing this?" Thor had asked while Jalter watched. Tilting her head slightly to the side. Jalter looked somewhat confused by that question. "I don't have one." Before Thor spoke, "You know what I am. I'm just a dog that follows cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught up with them, I just do things." Thor looked confused as Jalter looked at his hands. "Hydra has plans. The factions have plans, Thor has plans. Do you understand? They're conspirators. Always trying to control their sad world. I never conspire. I'm trying to show the conspirators how pathetic their attempts at control are." That Thor couldn't answer what Jalter was saying to him. When she saw him, she simply continued, "So when I say what happened in the past isn't personal," she commented as she began to walk towards Thor, "the conspirators put you where you are. You were one of those." She stopped her steps a few meters from Thor. "You had plans and look how they left you. I did what I do best. I took away their cute plan. And I turned it upside down." She would point to the entire city of Kuoh. "Look what we did in the supernatural world. With a few small barrels of gasoline and a couple of bullets." Thor would look at her. What? I'll tell you what I realized. And that is that no one gets upset when it goes according to plan. Even when the plan is creepy. If tomorrow we tell the world that someone will be murdered or that a group of demons will explode, Thor gripped the hammer tightly ready to attack her, they won't be upset. Because it's all part of a plan, but when I say that, pointing a finger, insignificant high-class devil will die, everyone loses their minds. Jalter shouted madly. Introduce some anarchy, upset the established order, and the world will become chaos, she smiled sadistically. I am an agent of chaos, I tell you something about chaos's fear. To the other place of Kuoh. Crom was staring straight ahead. The spot where a huge explosion had occurred. I see Jalter is having a lot of fun. The evil dragon commented, looking towards the other end. What do you think, Belial? She looked back at the demon and asked. The ultimate class demon, and one of the best fighters in the game ratings. He was staring directly at Crom, who seemed to care little that he was right there. Why are you doing this, Crom? I thought you didn't have any specific goal. Just to fight? The demon asked, arms crossed and with a piercing gaze. Crom shrugged, then tilted his head slightly to one side. You know something, Belial. It's true, I don't have any goals whatsoever. I only want to fight beings as strong as me, the evil dragon said. After all the chaos and stopping the Triaxa from leaving as well as killing Ryzavan, the fun for me was over. There was no dragon who wanted to fight me. And then months passed. And that's when your race, along with the angels and other mythologies of the Great Alliance, betrayed the only one, along with the hacker Yoku, who could entertain me in battle. Still clear. That Hyoudou Issei was clearly a pro-life existence. The evil dragon declared. So why did causing all this make you want to join this group of terrorists? Specifically, 5 years ago, after you betrayed Hyoudou Issei. One night, a man came to my cave. I thought he was a dragon who wanted to fight me, but I was surprised when he started talking to me. Dihauser wasn't happy with where this was going. It was clear that things weren't just going to end there, but there was something bigger behind all of this. You see, at first I thought he was crazy, but the more and more he talked, he began to convince me to join his cause. Slightly closing his eyes. It was something interesting, everything he had planned, every place, every move with great care. When and where to start the attack was very intelligent. Opening his eyes again. Hydra, as you can see, each one of them are mere pawns. Pointing to the Hydra soldiers fighting the demons. So you do all this just to fight against strong beings? That's crazy even for you, Crom. Dihauser spoke with clear annoyance, looking at the evil dragon. I see you don't understand. Dihauser, I'm not doing all this just for the sake of fighting. Releasing his Crom aura, he took a step forward. We've talked enough, but if you can keep me busy long enough, I'll give you some information. Dihauser wasn't far behind and unleashed his aura. The two of them charged at each other. Their fists collided, creating a massive shockwave. The demon's fists went numb. He quickly grabbed the demon's face and slammed him into the ground. Crom wouldn't stop there and would start throwing several blows all over his body, a lot of blows. Crom lifted him up and threw him against the wall. Ugh! Letting out a groan of pain, Dihauser quickly recovered and dodged a powerful kick from Crom. It was now Dihauser's turn, who attacked with several magic spells. The dragon wing, seeing them, swung its palm forward, and a small ball of energy formed. She threw it. Crom's attack and Dihauser's magical attacks collided, creating an explosion. Without further ado, Dihauser broke through the smoke screen. And, without being able to dodge it, Crom received a blow to his abdomen. Good, a sadistic smile appeared on Crom's face. Let's play. Dihauser was slightly surprised that Crom wasn't that affected by the blow he landed on Crom. And he couldn't do much when the dragon covered his fists with her aura. And she threw a powerful punch to his abdomen. Dihauser spat out a large amount of blood. The evil dragon didn't stop there and began to attack wildly. Each blow Dihauser received was like a powerful meteorite. Gaha! Crom let out a scream of pain. He charged another powerful blow, but this time it went straight to the face. And without being able to block it, Dihauser took the attack full on, sending him flying. I really thought he would put up more of a fight. I'm talking bored. Emerging from some rubble, Dihauser. His forehead was stained with blood. He began to release his chrome aura. Seeing him, he smiled and released a little more of his aura. Come, he pointed with his hand, Crom with his hand. Without wasting any more time, Dihauser launched himself at great speed, which made him crouch. He was slightly surprised and received a powerful blow to the face, causing him to flinch. Crom was somewhat surprised. He threw a punch, but Dihauser was faster and dodged the blow, launching a flurry of blows all over the dragon's abdomen. The dragon spat saliva, and Dihauser took advantage of this. He threw a powerful punch to the dragon's jaw. Annoyed by this blow, she tried to react. But she immediately attacked. But Dihauser was quicker and threw another punch, pushing the dragon away. The dragon glared at Dihauser in annoyance. Increasing his aura a little more, Dihauser quickly went on guard. But by the time he was about to attack back, Crom was already in front of him and threw a powerful blow, causing Dihauser to spit out blood and lose air. This time without wasting any more time, Crom attacked again. Dihauser held up his arms as a shield, but it was of little use, given the savage charge the dragon was inflicting on him. Seeing an opportunity to attack, Dihauser charged a large amount of demonic power into his left hand and attacked instantly. But Crom easily dodged the blow, but he didn't expect Dihauser to attack this time, landing a solid kick in his ribs. Guh! Letting out a groan of pain, Crom would take a few steps back. Belial style. Raptured Dihauser's fists and legs were covered by small magical layers, just like demonic power. He attacked Crom at great speed, but Crom couldn't dodge the demon's blows. Crom groaned loudly in pain. He tried to counterattack, but Dihauser was faster and landed a powerful blow to Crom's ribs, who groaned loudly in pain. Taking a few steps back while holding her ribs, Crom looked at Dihauser, who was standing and looking at her. That was impressive. You definitely caught me off guard with that attack of yours. Standing firm, Crom wiped the blood from her lips. And she looked directly at Dihauser, who was waiting for her. But you'll have to do more than that to stop me. Before Crom could attack again, she dodged a magical attack that came from nowhere, creating a huge explosion. She quickly turned her head. And there she saw him, a teenager about 16 or 17 years old. Short red hair. Her eyes were the same color as her hair. Milikas, what are you doing here? Dihauser asked the boy, who stopped in his tracks. Jew. So you're Milikas Gremory? Crom looked at the young man with some interest. Everyone calm down because I'm here, shouted a small girl. Short in stature with short white hair, red eyes, and she was carrying in her hand a gun and a sword made of light. And you are? Crom asked, seeing the girl, who was giving off a sacred aura. My name is Lint Selzen. I am the emissary of the church, also the brave saint of heaven. Disu, she introduced herself, singing her name, which made Crom look at her curiously. And so am I, along with the little red one who is winged next to me. We are Nexus, and we came to stop the bad guys and kick their asses for a while, Disu, Lint said with amusement in her words, ignoring that in front of her was a powerful evil dragon. Nexus? Crom would say, looking at the new arrivals. At that very moment, a powerful aura familiar to her appeared. This time it was a beautiful and sensual woman with long, light blue hair. She was also accompanied by a white-haired Valkyrie. Crom, the woman spoke, looking seriously at Crom. Tiamat, Crom replied as he released his aura. Tiamat responded in kind. Everyone around Crom did the same and released their auras. Milikas's was red with gray highlights. The Valkyrie's was silver, as she made several magic circles appear around Crom. Lint pointed his pistol at him, and Dihauser also released his aura. Crom, seeing that she was surrounded by people, became more serious. She released more of her aura, somewhat suffocating everyone around her. Cracking her knuckles, she smiled. Well, shall we get started? Crom mentioned and quickly launched himself at Tiamat, who responded in kind. Where both of them bumped fists into each other. In the center. Tobio was staring at the person in front of him. They were both staring at each other. Issei, Tobio spoke seriously, looking at the brown-haired man, but he didn't respond, and his other arm was missing the brown one. He pulled out his combat knife and prepared to fight. Tobio accepted, and activating his balance break, he was ready to attack him. In the distance, Lavinia was ready to attack him. Before the two of them launched themselves at each other, a magic circle appeared at Vala's side. He recognized it, and from it emerged none other than Ain, who was wearing a rather sensual armor. It covered her from her shoulders to her hands. Part of her leg was also covered by a piece of armor all the way to her knees. Ain, what are you doing here? Tobio asked the girl who just watched him monotonously. Roigun sent me as reinforcements to stop him. Pointing at the brown-haired boy. As she looked at him, she couldn't help but put on a somewhat sad expression at the sight of the man who didn't seem to recognize her. Tobio looked at her for a moment, then nodded and turned his gaze to Issei, who was lying there waiting for them. Chapter 9, Part 2. Issei was at a slight numerical disadvantage of 2 against 1. Tobio would see Issei and would be analyzing every move the brunette would make. Meanwhile, Ain had placed herself on guard, ready to attack. Ain. She was the first. Using propellants from the bottom of her armor and the part of her back, she launched herself at the chestnut tree. Ah! Giving a loud scream, she threw a big kick straight to the brunette's face. Upon seeing him, he ducked and dodged the kick. Ain didn't stop there, though, and began attacking him swiftly and ferociously. Even though he only had one hand, the brunette responded in kind to Ain's blows, blocking with her one arm Ain's blows, who moved with great speed and agility. She managed to land a strong blow to the brunette's chin, who stared at the sky for a few minutes. This was taken advantage of by Tobio, who didn't waste any more time and launched an attack. Tobio and Ain. Both of them began to connect large series of blows, causing Issei to grunt in pain. He bent his legs and managed to connect with his palm between Ain's breasts. Gah! Letting out a grunt of pain and placing his hand between her breasts, she began to gasp for air. Tobio was fast and powerful with his punches, and taking advantage of the fact that the brunette didn't have an arm, Tobio attacked with the best he had while the brunette was now blocking Tobio's occasional blows. The clear disadvantage he had without his other metal arm was evident. Leaping upwards, Tobio made several magic circles appear around the chestnut tree. Upon seeing them, he opened his eyes and then an explosion occurred around him. Tobio descended and Ain stood beside him. Are you okay, Ain? Ain nodded and looked at the place where Ain was. I'll be fine, don't worry. Speaking with some difficulty, Ain answered him. Tobio looked at her for a few moments, and saw how Ain's hands were shaking. He knew a little about her reason for seeing her like that, but he didn't have time to think about that, so he looked back to the front. Both of them opened their eyes in surprise, and then Tobio turned around. Watch out! Tobio's shout made Ain open her eyes. She barely managed to react and dodge a back attack from the brunette who appeared behind them. Tobio, although slightly surprised, launched his attack. It was a powerful kick. He saw the brunette raise his leg and block Tobio's kick with his own leg. This time he landed a powerful right hook to the face, making Issei stop covering himself. Ain and Tobio looked at each other and launched themselves at him together. While in the distance, Lavinia watched all this from a safe distance while she was getting off several Hydra soldiers. Opening her eyes slightly, she had observed something abnormal moving in the skies. It can't be. That's it. Opening her eyes, she quickly made a magic circle appear in her ear. Toby, we have problems. In the battle, Tobio had listened to everything Lavinia had said to him. Clicking his tongue, knowing what was coming, he became more serious and released his aura. Covered in a black aura and Ain in a silver one, both increased their speed, and seeing that the brown-haired boy was about to attack them, it was too late. Tobio had given a big blow to the brown-haired boy's abdomen, and Ain a powerful kick to the face. Glup. Spitting out some blood from his mouth, Issei. He had barely moved from where he was. Tobio and Ain started throwing punches, but they are a nuisance. Issei had spoken, and his eyes shone emerald and took on a more subtle appearance. And in a swift movement, Issei dodged Ain's blow, and he threw a powerful blow at Tobio's face, causing him to lose his balance a little, but it wasn't enough for the brunette, who began to deal a series of blows to every part of his body. Ain quickly went to help Tobio. And now she wanted to attack him. She threw a kick. But at the moment of throwing the kick, it was easily blocked since Issei had used his hand to catch the blow that was going to the face. And without further ado, he slammed it against the ground. Ugh! Releasing a grunt of pain, Issei didn't stop attacking her again. Throwing her against the ground several times, Ain only grunted in pain from the blows Issei was inflicting on her. But Tobio appeared at her side, causing Issei to slightly open his eyes due to his carelessness and tempo. With his palm, Tobio had given a big and strong blow to the brown-haired boy's face, causing him to release Ain and fly away and crash into some rubble. Seeing Ain, who was on the ground in some pain, he quickly bent down to help him stand up. "Come on, Ain, this isn't over yet." "I know," she replied while trying to find air. "I understand." But as he continued speaking, chains surrounded his arm. "Huh? Get over here!" Issei would shout using the chains. Issei attracted him with great force where the brown-haired man's arm was covered in fire, and he gives a great uppercut to Tobio's chin, causing him to fly up. But Issei would light the chains and throw and divide. Suddenly from the skies descended a white armor with blue gems, looking directly at the brown-haired boy who, upon seeing it, was slightly surprised. "Hyoudou Issei, the hacker you mentioned," while looking at the brown-haired boy. "What are you doing here, Vala?" Lucifer. Without turning around to see, Vala just continued watching Issei. "MMHP?" Raising an eyebrow, Issei just stood up and then he gave his arm to the side where a magic circle was formed. Tobio just watched while Lavinia was running to help the team from the magic circle. Another metallic arm came out, but in a different shape than the one she was using before. Even everyone managed to feel the aura that the arm was releasing. The metal arm was only slightly different from the previous one. This one only had gold accents on some parts of it, just like the other one had the Hydra logo marked on it. Putting it on very calmly, Issei only made a few movements with his arm and then looked at the others. "Let's continue." Jalter and Thor were constantly exchanging blows in a fairly even battle. Their battlefield was completely destroyed by the constant blows their weapons were throwing at each other. Jalter had part of his armor somewhat destroyed and blood was flowing from his forehead, but his sadistic smile never disappeared from his face. Thor, on the other hand, has a wound on his chest from one of Jalter's attacks. They both turned back. They clashed their respective weapons, creating another Jalter wave. He covered his sword in fire and Thor responded in kind with his lightning hammer. They both clashed their weapons again and looked at each other with a smile. The amusement of both was very noticeable on each of their faces. Jalter moved a few meters back and watched him for a moment. "Hey, you certainly know how to respond to your powers, Norse god Thor," Jalter mentioned, sticking his sword into the ground. "For a human, you're not doing too bad." Smiling, I replied, "Ha ha ha, but I think I should go seriously. I feel my master is having problems." Thor raised an eyebrow in curiosity, and Jalter was covered by a shine and Jalter's armor had changed radically. Now her armor was a little more revealing than the previous one. Her boots changed to large heels up to her knees. Jalter smiled and pointed his sword at Thor. "Well, Norse god, get ready." Thor smiled at what Jalter said. "Then come, I too will respond to your seriousness." Thor was covered by lightning, and Jalter lunged at Thor at a greater speed. Thor managed to follow Jalter's movement, and Thor attacked with a big smile, and launched a great and powerful attack. Boom! A huge explosion had occurred where a huge pillar stood. Light filled the entire space where the two of them were standing. Little by little, things were getting clearer, and Jalter was standing with his sword still in his hands. Thor, like Jalter, still had his Mjolnir in his hand. Then both of their weapons fell to the ground. "Hey, it was fun." Thor smiled and then fell to the ground while losing large amounts of blood. Jalter watched his sword disappear into particles and then closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, Master. I won't be able to help you now. I need to sleep a little." He opened his hands that despise in particles of light. "Then I'll have my revenge, Thor." And then she disappeared into particles of light, leaving no trace of her behind, just like her sword, which also disappeared. Kromkruch was fighting fiercely against Tiamat. The two were exchanging great blows in a fierce and savage manner. Kromkruch was the one who dodged a great magical attack that Rosswise launched at him. "What an annoying woman!" Letting out a growl, Kromkruch launched a powerful fire magic attack towards the Valkyrie, who used several Nordic runes and blocked the attack. "The clown has arrived!" And with that carelessness, Lint appeared at Kromkruch's side and began shooting at him. Kromkruch turned his face to the side, dodging the shots, and threw a strong blow, but Lint jumped into the air, dodging his attack. "Take this!" Rosswise appeared in the skies and several circles appeared behind them, and fired all her arsenal. Kromkruch, seeing the immense attack, she created a magic barrier, and an explosion covered the entire place where Kromkruch was. Rosswise looked in front of her, so there was a trail of the evil dragon, and at that same instant Kromkruch appeared in front of her and with his extended fist threw a strong blow to the abdomen. Glup! Letting out a groan of pain, Rosswise saw how Crump's crutch fist was embedded in his abdomen. Gruroa! Tiamat appeared at the side of Crumb Crutch and gave a great blow to the face of the evil dragon, making her release the Valkyrie. Without wasting any more time, she launched herself with all her power against Crumb. Crumb Crutch ran his hand over his lip and saw that it had blood and smiled at this. This was definitely getting very good for the evil dragon. Milikas Gremory, who was lying recovered from the blow he received from the dragon, covered his fist with Hakai no Chikara. And he launched himself alongside Tiamat to fight head-on. Crumb Crutch, seeing them, only released more of his aura and launched himself at both of them. Tiamat and Milikas managed to stop and prevent Crumb Crutch from doing more damage, and knowing that they can't depend on Gabriel right now, who was totally exhausted from his previous battle, but there was still Lint and Rosswise, who recovered from the blow, and together with Lint prepared the ranged attack. Lint with her pistol began to shoot in a great way, and moving at great speed she placed herself at Tiamat's side. "Take this!" Giving a great shout, Mata and Milikas stepped aside where Crumb Crutch saw Lint, and he saw how Lint had thrown a kind of grenade at him, and when it exploded Crumb Crutch was completely blinded, implying that the bomb was a Reaper bomb. "Now!" Rosswise, who gave a great shout. He created a large magic circle that appeared in the sky's Ryusei, and a great shower of meteors began to fall from the sky. Milikas was covered by a large and dense crimson aura with silver highlights, and in his hand a large ball of red energy was formed. Hakai! And now launch a large and powerful sphere of Hakai no Chikara towards Crumb Crutch. Karyu no Hoko! And Tiamat would charge from his mouth a great and powerful ice attack that he was launching towards the evil dragon. Crumb Crutch felt the attacks coming toward her. She held up her arm as a shield. A huge explosion occurred where Crumb Crutch was standing, and boom! A gigantic explosion sounded all over the place. Tiamat, Rosswise, Milikas, Lint watched in front of them for any movement. "We won Disu?" Lint would ask as he looked ahead. "No," Milikas will say while observing the place where Crumb Crutch was. "This is just beginning, Lint." "Fu, what else?" An amused smile appeared on the exorcist's face. "It's time to use my babies." With her gun out, she pointed it at the site of the explosion. They stood still for a few moments, hoping to see some movement from a dog. "Careful!" Tiamat tried to give him a warning, but it was too late. Crumb Crutch appeared in front of Lint, and Crumb Crutch would give a big blow to Lint's abdomen. It didn't hurt. She would scream as she flew out and crashed into a building. Milikas was the one who reacted the fastest, and millimeters away he dodged a strong swipe from Crumb Crutch. Tiamat lashed out at the evil dragon who saw her coming. Her arms were covered in scales, her face as well as much of her body, and she would take Tiamat's hand, stopping her suddenly. The queen dragon's face was completely in shock when she saw how easily she stopped her attack. Hakai Satairu, fuck him! Milikas appeared right behind the evil dragon who saw him. He quickly put his arm as a shield, blocking Milikas's hooks. Releasing the dragon Kui fist, Crumb would attack back, but Milikas would change his speed and make an ice sword appear. Being inherited by his mother, Milikas didn't waste any more time and threw a large number of blows using his special movement. Hakai Satairu Fuka. The destruction style was created by Milikas himself after the coup d'état of the current new Maos. He was properly trained by his Venezuelan grandmother Bale, who took Milikas under her wing. His training with his grandmother was a true hell. And in that time, he created his own style of how to use his powers of destruction. And at just 17 years old, Milikas was already at his father's level when, at the age of 24, he took the underworld under his control. Without wasting any time, Milikas launched a large number of blows at the evil dragon, who blocked and dodged the attacks. Crumb Crutch launched a strong kick, but it was blocked by Milikas, who with his free arm created a ball of Hakai no Chikara and placed his hand on the evil dragon's abdomen. Hakai, an explosion was generated, causing the evil dragon to fly and crash into a wall. Pwag! Spitting out some blood, Crumb Crutch looked slightly surprised. Without a doubt, Milikas Gremory was strong like his father. A smile formed on the face of the evil dragon, who raised his gaze and saw the emotionless faces of Milikas. Rosswise, who was watching the fight from afar helping Lint, was very surprised by the display of power of Milikas. Tiamat was in the same boat, as her Diehauser just watched the confrontation intently. Crumb Crutch, Milikas mentioned as his body was surrounded by Hakai no Chikara, and let's get this over with. Hell, I couldn't agree more, brat, she smiled as she released more of her dragonic aura. I'll show you the true power of dragons. Chapter 10. Final part. Exchanging a large number of blows, Hyoudou against Ex-Hyoudou Issei, who returned the blows with the same brutality. Tobio, who was also fighting Issei, was in a 2-on-1 hand-to-hand fight. Further away were Ain and Lavinia Rennie. This is getting more complicated. Lavinia could only bite her lower lip. From what Ain said, we have to find a way to stop him. Do you have any ideas? She would ask while looking at the mage. Yes, there's one, but you won't like it. Ain just had a big lump in her throat and, okay, let's do it. With great determination in her eyes, she nodded. Tell me what you need. I just tried to give myself 10 minutes, and I'll have it ready. Ain nodded and stood up, and Ain would watch her. Be careful. Ain nodded and then launched herself into fighting the brown-haired boy while Lavinia just watched from afar. In the battle that was having Vala, Lucifer and Tobio accused against an old friend of Tobio and Vala, it was a hard and brutal battle. The amount of blows that both received from Issei was painful. In a desperate attempt by Vala, he tried to go for his metal arm, but he was brutally beaten by Issei, who made him let out all his air and spit out blood at the same time. Tobio, seeing this, launched himself to hit the brown-haired man who, upon seeing him, he would leave the Hyoudou and throw a punch, but Ain appeared right next to Issei and gave him a great kick to the ribs, causing the brown-haired man to fly and crash into some rubble. Ain? Tobio would approach her. Lavinia has a plan, and with those only words Tobio nods. How much? Tobio asked. 10 minutes, Ain would say, watching the chestnut tree emerge from the rubble. Okay, then let's go all in now or never, Ain, Tobio mentioned while he was still in his balance break. Issei would watch them for a moment and put himself on high guard, and Ain and Tobio were the first to launch themselves against the brunette, who didn't stay still and launched himself at both of them. Dodging Ain's kick, Issei and Tobio threw a great blow where their fists collided with each other. Ain would attack with some ice magic attacks towards the back, but the brown-haired man would dodge it, as would Tobio, and Issei would now launch himself against the silver-haired woman, who upon seeing him smiled with some irony and sadness. Upon seeing the brown-haired man skiing Issei's attack, Ain reacted by kicking him in the abdomen, followed by a series of consecutive blows. One blow or another was unable to block Issei, who in an attempt to counterattack Ain dodges the blow, and Tobio appeared right at that moment with his fist wrapped in shadows, this blow right to the face of the brown-haired boy who tried to react. Divide. Vala, Lucifer appeared using his Longinus, made the brown-haired man lose a great amount of strength in his whole body, and the series of blows of the three began, who did not stop hitting the brown-haired man who tried to cover himself. But it was impossible. Taking his right arm, Vala uncovered a part of his face and gave him a great blow. Tobio launched a series of blows to the brown-haired man's abdomen, and Ain grabbed his metal arm and then uncovered it to give him a strong kick to the chin, making Issei spit blood. Now Lavinia! Tobio's scream was the signal that everyone was waiting for, where in the sky a large magic circle formed, and from there came out a large and powerful dragon made of lightning was plummeting towards where Hyoudou Issei was. Without being able to react, the dragon hit him and a large and powerful explosion was generated. Lavinia, Tobio, and Vala created a magic circle to cover themselves from the devastating attack, and Ain just watched. The massive explosion caused the entire battlefield to be destroyed, creating a gigantic crater. The four individuals decided to dismantle the magic shields. They looked in the center of the crater to see if there was a trace of Issei. There. Lavinia would point at a specific place. Before everyone went, Ain was the first to go. When she saw the chestnut's condition, everyone quickly followed her and managed to see that the chestnut was totally badly injured and losing large amounts of blood. Ain, how are you? Tobio would ask as he approached. Ain put her hatred on the chestnut-haired man's chest, and she smiles as she hears a few small heartbeats. Okay, Tobio nodded, and Lavinia would also run to help the brown-haired boy. That's good. The only one who didn't say a word was Vala, who closed his eyes slightly, and then looked at the night sky. The battle had finally ended in that part. Now they just needed to defeat Gromkruch. Gromkruch was completely excited by this great battle she was having against Milikas, Gremory, and Tiamat, who right now were the offensive of the attack, and Rosswise was the defensive. Gromkruch was slightly impressed by how Tiamat and Milikas understood each other perfectly and coordinated in a great way to fight against herself. If that was the case, it's more than likely that Tiamat and Milikas weren't the first time they had worked as a team, although there was some truth to that, since in the past both Tiamat and Milikas had done some missions, whether for a reward, in Tiamat's case, or for something personal, in Milika's case, and both had crossed paths more than once. That was one of the reasons why both were so coordinated in the attack. Milikas would throw a large ball of energy from Hakai no Chikara towards the evil dragon who dodged the attack, but it was Rosswise who appeared, and behind her several magic circles formed behind her, and as if she were the gate Babylonia, Rosswise bombarded Crom Cruch with everything. Putting his arms crossed, Crom Cruch took the full brunt of Rosswise's attack without even being able to react, and Matt appeared right in front of him and threw a strong punch. Kuoh releasing a growl, the evil dragon quickly grabbed Aunt Matt's arm and then her face and slammed it into the ground. Milikas, who appeared covered by Hakai no Chikara all over his body, began to throw several punches, being the evil dragon who dodged the attack, and with her fist wrapped in fire, and Milikas managed to react just in time and put her right arm as a shield, managing to block the brutal attack of Crom Cruch. Gup releasing a small moan of pain, Milikas looked at the eyes of the evil dragon, who smiled. Milikas now attacked with a desperate attack to free himself from Crom Cruch's grip with a strong headbutt, but he didn't even manage to scratch him. Crom Cruch smiled. "That's all!" Crom Cruch shouted to give a powerful headbutt to Milikas. Crack! Milikas's bone had cracked where a small trace of blood ran down his forehead. It was Milikas who lost his balance, and some of his strength was used by Crom Cruch, who threw him towards Rosswise, who took the child. But it was that small oversight that Crom Cruch took advantage of to appear in front of Rosswise and deliver a large and powerful blow between Rosswise's chest, causing her to lose a large amount of air and fly away along with Milikas. Already rid of two annoyances, Crom Cruch would turn his face and saw Tiamat's fist going straight to his face. Yes. Managing to react in time, Crom Cruch took the blow full on, leaving him somewhat stunned by the blow. Tiamat began to give a great series of blows all over the body of the evil dragon, who could do nothing but receive Tiamat's assault. If more, Tiamat began to increase the speed of his blows, making his fists were covered by his dragonic aura, being Crom Cruch impossible to dodge the attack of the dragon that seemed to be in a berserker state, since his body was all covered by scales. His eyes were slanted, while he hit without any tiredness. Gruawa! The powerful scream of Tiamat was what was heard throughout the place, making Crom Cruch finally manage to react and clash fists with Tiamat. A powerful shock wave was generated throughout the place. Now Crom Cruch released more and more of her aura. It was time for her to become serious. The berserker state of a dragon was not to be taken lightly, since in that state the dragons go into a trance that causes them to lose their minds, and only their basic battle instinct is the only thing that remains in that state, whether it is a dragon. From a low level, its powers increased to be on par with a king dragon. In the case of Tiamat, its powers increased to a dragon of celestial class, being very on par with Albion. Crom Cruch and Tiamat clashed. Their fists clashed, and there was no respite as Tiamat unleashed her aura, which was navy blue and Crom Cruch's was black with hints of purple. It was a savage fight. Dihauser, who was watching the fight from a distance and was observing the battle, could undoubtedly see something that made his body tremble, and it was that all the destruction that both dragons were causing seemed like when Dreen and Albion were free. Dragons are undoubtedly very extraordinary beings, but they are also very dangerous. Both dragons would strike each other, but still they continued attacking each other without stopping. Each blow Crom Cruch received was as if he were being crushed by a large meteorite, the same being the case with Tiamat, who, even in that state, felt Crom Cruch's blows that seemed like they would pierce through his body at any moment. Gruawawa! Both dragons let out a great war roar that was heard throughout the city. Spreading their wings, both dragons began to fight in the air. Seeing that in the distance they saw some lines of black with purple and a light blue one, both dragons did not stop hitting each other, Crom Cruch being the one who gave a big and strong headbutt to Tiamat, who responded with a blow to the abdomen. Letting out a grunt of pain, Crom Cruch was already being affected by the constant blows she received to her abdomen, so making a quick decision, she caught Aunt Matt's arms, and then she made a great diving movement, causing both of them to fall at great speed towards the ground. Tiamat tried to use her wings, but Crom Cruch was faster and dismounting. Why is she the evil dragon? Stronger, and her power is on par with a celestial dragon. She broke the sound barrier. Pam! Both had crashed into the great ground, raising a large mountain as a smoke screen emerging from the rubble. Crom Cruch looked clearly exhausted from the fight she had, although she was still clearly satisfied with what she did. Humph! Looking up, he saw a group of demonic soldiers. I give up. The battle had already ended in victory for the alliances and the new terrorist group Nexus. While right now in a prison in the underworld there was a person who was in a kind of glass dome. He was on his knees, his arms were chained, his head was bowed, and some footsteps begin to be heard, and someone stops in front of the ice cube. Issei looked up and saw Tobio Accuse, who was looking at him seriously. It's been a while, Issei. Tobio would comment with his arms crossed. I think it's time for you to tell me some information. Sir, are you sure you want to let that dragon, our greatest experiment and Jalter, be with the supernatural beings? A Hydra soldier on his knees will say. In front of her was a throne where it was noticeable that there was a man sitting with his legs crossed. Next to him there were 4 people. Among those 4 people was Yuriko herself, who had a calm expression. If you don't worry about them, you can leave now. You did a good job. The Hydra soldier nods and then leaves the place. Is something wrong, Yuriko? Do you seem more thoughtful? The man would ask. None, sir. I was just thinking about something else. He responded calmly. Humph? Whatever, you can bring them to me. He ordered one of the soldiers in the room, and the door was opened where a group of soldiers entered who were carrying 2 people who seemed to have been suffering great torture. Putting the soldiers to the 2 hostages on their knees, the leader made a movement with his hands and the soldiers took out the bags in front of his face, revealing none other than Yasaka and Issei Ex-Hyoudou. Chapter 11. Human World Place? Sitting on a large pile of corpses, there was a person eating apples. He had a neutral gaze, his eyes void of any sparkle as he stared straight ahead. Is that all the demons can offer? I spoke, looking at a small group of surviving demons who were on their knees looking at the subject. They are pathetic, and to think that they were trying to form a new terrorist group to try to free the Triaxa again. Standing up, he extended his palm. A strange energy formed in his hand. He then threw it without even a murmur. The surviving demons screamed in pain and agony. Turning slightly was a young man in his 20s. He was completely injured. One of his arms was missing, as was half of his leg. The man sighed and then spoke over the intercom. I already have the target. Excellent. Try bringing him back alive. It will be a great help in achieving our objective. The voice came from the other side, where the man nodded. Lugo, taking the brown-haired boy, began walking seemingly aimlessly. While in the distance, they saw an elderly man, observing the place. Smiling, he turned around and began to walk away. From that place. Hungdan, where am I? Said the man, who was totally disoriented. It was about time you woke up. Hearing the stranger's voice, I quickly looked for him everywhere. Who the hell are you? Show me, you bastard. Giving a loud scream and trying to move, but hey? And saw that his arm was in shackles. What the hell is this? Isn't it obvious? The voice said back as it began to approach. You were caught by one of my men, and I must say it. I've been looking for you for quite some time. From the shadows, the man saw him. He was averagely tall, about 6 feet tall. He was wearing a strange mask that covered his entire face. It was more like a tights. He was wearing a completely tight suit. Who are you? The brown-haired boy asked, observing him. I am Baron Helmut Zemo, a former colonel of the Sokovia Armed Forces and the commander of the Kuoh Scorpion, and you are Issei Ex-Hyoudou. Zemo spoke very calmly while observing him. So you know what I am. You know it's going to be your turn, you damn bastard. Giving a roar. Isaac would try to free himself from the chains, but hey. Because I can't free myself from these damn chains. He would scream. You think I'd be an idiot? And I'd let you have everything so you could free yourself. I spent years hunting down the people the Chaos Brigade recruited to recreate the serum. Because if it gets to the streets, someone could create an army of people, like the DXD. I once shut down the Winter Soldier program. I have no intention of leaving my work unfinished, Zemo would say calmly. Winter Soldier? That was the first thing that came to Isaac's mind. He had no idea who this guy was. And now he found out that this same guy standing in front of him was the one who had destroyed his army. Not even the super demons he created with Hades had been able to survive. Winter Soldier? Isaac asked, looking at him. I see you still don't know the Winter Soldier is your dear brother Hyoudou, Issei, Zemo would say with his arms crossed. Isaac was shocked to learn that his older brother was still alive. He watched him. Zemo approached, and then, without even noticing, a magic circle formed beneath him and, it's time taking out some tools. Even if you're a bastard, you'll be a great help in creating my perfect weapon. Ah! Isaac's loud scream was heard throughout the complex where Hydra's secret base was located, in the seventh heaven Garden of Eden. In the most beautiful field of flowers that was once the Garden of Eden, stood a very beautiful woman with long blonde hair. Her sky blue eyes were utterly serious as she gazed at the lush garden. "Miss Gabriel," a voice said behind the woman known as Gabriel. "Griselda, did something happen?" The woman would ask, turning around. "I have the reports that Lint delivered after the battle." Griselda would approach and hand a notebook to Gabriel. "Thank you." Looking at the folder, she looked at the entire report that the folder said. Without even a single detail, Lint managed to extract more information than Gabriel expected. Not only did he extract extremely useful information, but he also extracted information about where one of the many bases of the terrorist group Hydra could be found. But there was also more information they managed to extract from Krom Kruch, who is currently locked away in hell for her crimes. Beyond that, the information said that Hydra was divided into 3 or 4 armies, led by a single person, Baron Helmut Zemo. He's the one who runs Hydra, or well, he has a team that controls the Hydra deployment team. Helmut Zemo is the leader of the entire organization, while the rest was about his targets. None. There was no specific objective. Strange for Gabriel. He continued reading and then sighed and looked at his second in command. "Griselda, what did Roygan and the rest of the Alliance members say?" Gabriel would ask. "It's hard to say, but Roygan, like all the leaders, is planning to hold an emergency meeting in Kuoh, more specifically in the Kuoh Academy." I would answer to Gabriel, "But Miss Gabriel." "Yes, Griselda? It's him. He wants to talk to you." After that answer, Gabriel nodded. "Okay, now I'll go." In a minute, sighing, she began to walk away. "You can leave, Griselda." Gabriel withdrew from heaven and then began to walk. A few moments later, she arrived at her destination, where there was a kind of prison. There was one in heaven, a prison in which those angels who had once been her elders were housed. Among those few angels found, there was the angel who guarded the Garden of Eden, who prevented evil from entering the garden. There were also certain angels with special abilities, such as Azrael, who guarded the prison in heaven. Upon entering, she began to walk, unfazed by the few angels who watched her. Upon reaching the cell, she found herself standing there. A man with long blonde hair and a very effeminate face. He couldn't help but smile as he watched her. "Hello, Gabriel." Closing her eyes, she watched him. "Michael, what do you want now?" She mentioned to him without any hesitation. "Nothing, I just wanted to see you." Without looking at her, he answered. Gabriel didn't even flinch at that comment for several years, since Gabriel and the other angels took over heaven and imprisoned Gabriel and his followers. Among them Irina Shido, who was also locked up until she gave birth to her son, who lives happily in heaven with his adoptive mother Griselda as well as his half-sister. "Michael, can I ask why you did that?" Michael would observe her. "Why did you do that to Issei? Closing his eyes, Michael didn't even know how to answer that question. "I don't know, sister. I don't even know the reason why he let everything happen." "You're lying," he responded in a dry and at the same time sad manner. "Tell me the truth, brother, for once in your entire existence." "Gabriel, what would I tell you if all this was already written in the heavy?" Gabriel would look at him. "In the apocalypse I will fight with Lucifer, and the human world would be destroyed. It would be a battle bigger than the 2 celestial dragons. What does this have to do with Michael?" Gabriel would look at his brother with many doubts. That everything was written by Father Gabriel. He knew everything that would happen and how the world would change. Slightly closing his eyes, Hyoudou Issei is an existence that should never exist in the world. The one who should have carried the Bostigar was Isaac, but if Isaac was the bearer of the Bostigar, he suddenly fell, and the world would have fallen into chaos. Gabriel, looking his sister straight in the eyes before dying, Father made sure that the Bostigar already had an owner in the system. That owner was Issei. Father knew everything, and there were 2 paths. "Which is it?" the first walked. "It was a world where you and the others like Rias and her entourage had a long happy life and above all have children." Gabriel opened his eyes. "And the other was a future where Issei is the one who makes the world change for the better. For that same reason I betrayed him, and I knew what would happen after that." A small smile appeared on his face. "And that's why, Gabriel. Your future with Penemu, Kuroka, Roygun, Ain, Rosswise, Invilg and Elter will have a beautiful future with 3 other females." Gabriel remained silent as she cried silently, and clenched her fists tightly, causing them to draw blood. Gabriel Michael observes her. Don't worry about me, I still have something to do, and I won't die like Azazel. Looking at the ceiling, the human and supernatural world will be one, no more pain or hunger. And each race will finally live in peace. Gabriel just cried silently after everything. He was his brother. Now he just hopes the future will change for the better, and that his sacrifice won't be in vain. Underworld prison. She sat there stroking her brown hair. She had a calm gaze, and above all, she was observing him. Master, she said affectionately while smiling tenderly, he saved her from the hell she endured after her death at the stake. How curious was fate. He worked hard for a message from an angel, who gave him a Stephanie that she was the one who would free France. But then she would have to die at a very young age, betrayed by those with whom she had once shared the battlefield. And then imprisoned. She was raped by several soldiers before being burned. She wept and begged God to help her. But he never answered. And then she died a painful death. She fell into hell and was tortured again and again by all those she had killed in battle. But it was when he appeared in the very hell she was being tormented in that a glimmer of hope formed. Seeing him standing there, all wounded, with the head of a skeleton. And then from there things changed a lot with him. Ever since he freed her from that hell he was always attentive, and so on. Even though she was violent, little by little he gained her great trust, and they pampered her a lot, buying her clothes or sweets. Lots of sweets. Smiling, remembering all those moments, she continued stroking her master's hair. Issei, I love you. Chapter 12, Part 1. A group of soldiers from the Grand Alliance Army were patrolling the entire area of the most important city in the underworld. Lilith was in the territory of the great demon king, Lucifer, without even noticing that something was moving from the shadows. In the large prison where Kroch was being held, Jalter and the former Hyoudou Issei were locked up. A group of people were walking in the main entrance. They were dressed in the uniform of the demon army. As one of the 3 guards at the gate, he approached her. Stop right there, Sho. Pearl couldn't finish speaking as he was shot in the head. The other 2 guards saw him. Ivan quickly attacked, but their bodies fell, split in half. Behind them stood a man wielding a blood-stained katana. His face was covered by a hood. Let's continue. Inside the cell where Jalter was being held, she opened her eyes slightly. A smile appeared on her face. Several soldiers were pouring into every part of Lilith's great capital. They settled in various parts of the great noble territories of hell. While in the underworld prison, the group of 4 appeared to be planting bombs. At the gate, the woman with the katana at her waist noticed a watch she was wearing. It's time. Pressing the button on his side, the numbers on the clock began to move quickly. Jalter stood up and then made his sword appear. And it was covered by his armor. She watched. Let the war begin. Boom! A huge explosion occurred in the prison. Meanwhile, in the city of Lilith, the soldiers began their attack. The explosion shook the entire place, and the soldiers began to ask what had happened. Until Jalter stood next to Issei and the scream came from the guards inside the chestnut tree's cell. The one standing there was none other than Jalter. He covered his sword in fire and purgatory. Throwing a big cut, a gigantic explosion was generated inside the cell where the katana was. Quickly call, the demon continued speaking. His head was brutally impaled. The other demons in the area attacked Ivan. But Issei just appeared and took the head of one of the demons and began to squeeze it with all his strength. Without being able to free himself, the demon began to attack with several blows that didn't move a single centimeter. But applying force, Issei squeezed the demon's head, causing a great explosion of blood. Jalter split the last remaining demon in half and looked at Issei. Let's go, Master, Jalter would say, getting Issei's attention. Issei crouched down and then picked up his weapon, which was a kind of spear. Getting back to his feet, he began to follow her. Kroch sat in his cell with a calm and serene look on his face. His eyes were closed. I see, it's about time. Standing up, she looked at the demons who seemed to be battling against the prisoners. Without even the slightest effort, she destroyed the cage. Moving at great speed, she appeared behind one of the soldiers. And without giving any reason for doubt, the soldier was smashed into pieces, his upper body slamming into the wall while his lower body, where his feet still were, fell to the ground. Smiling sadistically, she watched the soldiers as they began attacking her. Without moving, Kroch took all the attacks directly. Without taking any damage, she moved at great speed in front of one of them. She took his weapon and then, with the soldier's own weapon, she ended up piercing his head. Turning her head, she saw the last remaining demon. He dropped his weapon and started running. Seeing her, slightly disappointed, she sighed and the soldier flew into a wall, where half of his body was turned upside down. His legs and feet were twisted. Meanwhile, the demon, agonizing in pain, stretched his hands out in front of him. Help. He stopped talking because Kromkruch had crushed his head, creating a small explosion of blood. I think it would be best to join the others, a little bored of how the soldiers died easily for her. Kromkruch put his hands in his pockets and began walking through the corridors. The city of Lilith was in complete chaos. Vast Hydra armies and supernatural beings were locked in a fierce battle for victory. The supernatural beings had the absolute advantage over their enemies. Roigan-sama, I have information. A soldier appears next to Roigan, who turns around when he sees him. Dialas, he answered in a cold and dry manner, making the demon nod. Our reports say that the former hero of the factions has finally escaped from the underworld prison. After that revelation, Roigan opened her eyes in surprise. She then nodded and looked at the demon. I want you to go and report this to him. It was clear Roigan would say, looking at the guard. Yes, ma'am. The demon quickly left that place. He didn't see how the look on his face changed to a darker, emotionless look. He was surrounded by several Hydra soldiers. You not only will you pay with your lives for attacking my kingdom, releasing a great amount of bloodlust. Roigan made the soldiers freeze in fear, now die. Ah! They were the screams of agony of the soldiers who were killed in the most brutal way possible. Human world place? On a beautiful beach overlooking the ocean, a group of people were gathered. 7 of them, watching from afar. It seems things have started to change for all of us. Closing his eyes slightly, Kromkruch said. Yep, Issei responded monotonously, who was in the middle of Kromkruch and Jalter. In front of them, 4 people known to them were pointing their guns at them, Yuriko and 3 other individuals. It seems Zemo was right. They were certainly already waiting for us to make our move, one of those accompanying Yuriko would say. And to think that you finally managed to recover some of your memories, Issei, Yuriko would say while observing Issei. I would say so. His eyes shone with an intense golden color, and although I only have vague memories of the past. Standing on high guard alongside Kromkruch and Jalter, who were now ready to fight their enemies. It's a shame we have to do this, but she would observe. Her group orders are orders. Snapping their fingers, Yuriko and her group took out some weapons which made both Kromkruch and Issei feel a great chill run down their spines. Now, looking at Issei and his group, Yuriko pointed her gun at Issei. Let's get this over with. Bang! Human world place? In a beautiful forest, there was an elderly man with a long white beard and an eye patch. He was dressed in the clothes of a vagabond. His Miranda was serene and calm. Turning slightly, he saw a person behind him. What brings you here, son? The man said calmly. It's been a while since we last spoke, father, a male voice would say. The old man smiled. He looked back ahead. Yes, Loki. Chapter 13, Part 2. In the underworld, the battle was beginning, a fight of humans against supernatural beings. Tobio Accused along with the remaining Slashdog team were in charge of helping civilians. On the other hand, Rosswise along with Kuroko were totally in charge of stopping any advance of the enemy. Roigan Lucifer is holding off most of Hydra's soldiers, his aide, Ain, who is wearing his armor, and in charge of helping and assisting those in need. Without a doubt, the Hydra attack was a surprise that Roigan and the other Maus they didn't realize, because the fact that Kromkruch would let himself be locked up was already a bad omen. However, she hadn't thought about it either because she was too distracted after finding out that Issei was still alive. And she wasn't the only one, but Elter too. And the rest who knew the brown-haired man were the same in the end. It was just such a childish mistake. Sekavaria Asgars, the current clan leader, was standing next to Elter, who were helping the wounded at the battlefield. However, another explosion was heard closer. TSK clicking her tongue, Sekavaria quickly placed a magic circle in front of her and managed to prevent the debris from falling on her. However, Sekavaria reacted in time and dodged several enemy attacks behind her. As she was surrounded, she looked at the rest of the enemies and, out of nowhere, an explosion knocked everyone around her out. Turning slightly, she saw the cause of the magical attack. It was none other than Sona Leviathan, or Citri, who was accompanied by the rest of her nobility. The two noble demons stared at each other for a moment, and, Secaveria, without saying anything else, they both continued their fight. Human world. Bang! It was the sound of the shot and the signal for combat. Hyoudou Issei along with his companions Krom Kruch and Jalter quickly launched themselves against their enemies. Yuriko was the first to leave that battle of the three hooded figures accompanying her. They were directly accosted by their opponents. Jalter was the first to attack with her sword covered in fire. She clashed her sword with the one she held. When their swords collided, they began a great sword fight. They were both completely evenly matched in their fights. However, Jalter received a kick to the abdomen, knocking her back several meters. Jalter looked up and was slightly surprised to see the person in front of her. He had long black hair and was wearing black armor. His eyes were completely red and had a reticule shape. How? Ares had killed you. It was none other than the god of war from Greek mythology, Ares. Ares merely snorted in annoyance as he stared directly at Jalter. Heh. Really? You thought he'd die from something as simple as a stab, Ares said as he started walking towards Jalter. You saw him aim for the head. Saying that, the god of war launched himself at Jalter at a great speed impossible to see with the human eye. Jalter reacted in time and blocked the god's attack with his sword. Feeling like his bones were about to break, Jalter quickly threw a few punches to try to push Ares away. The Greek god was unfazed by the blow, and when he released the blow, Jalter couldn't move him or even get him off of him. Ares put on a sadistic smile, and applying more force to his sword, he began to make Jalter retreat. Jalter, seeing herself somewhat cornered, quickly began to look around the place in search of a way out. But it was a little too late as the Greek god stopped applying force. Spinning his sword, he slashed vertically, hoping to cut her in half. Jalter was moving faster than usual, covering his sword in fire and blocking the god's powerful attack. Being dragged several meters back, Ares quickly launched himself at her, closing the distance between both opponents. Jalter faster than anyone, she blocked another attack from the Greek god and both began a great clash of swords moving at great speed. The clashes of both swords sounded throughout the place, and in the place where both Ares and Jalter were, a crater was forming. Due to the current circumstances, Jalter had to have several ideas in his mind because he had no intention of losing against this damned god. TSK. Flicking Jalter's tongue with her other free hand, a banner appeared with a flag. She looked once more at the god, who seemed less interested in what Jalter held in his other hand. I hate to have to use this against you, but narrowing his eyes, the banner began to glow. I have no other choice. Joe smiled and come human, and they both started throwing at each other again. While on the other side, Hyoudou Issei was fighting against an elderly-looking man around 40 years old. He has black hair with red streaks, yellow eyes, a medium-long beard, and a scar that ran from his nose to the bottom of his left eye. They were both engaged in a hand-to-hand fight. But the older-looking man moved faster than the brunette and delivered a powerful uppercut to the chin, followed by a series of punches. However, Issei used his metallic arm to protect himself from each blow he received. Raising his gaze upwards, the chestnut-haired enemy suddenly moved away when out of nowhere the ground below exploded, creating a huge curtain. Issei took advantage of this and launched himself against his opponent because seeing nothing, Issei threw a powerful blow to his enemy's abdomen, who spat out large amounts of blood. However, his opponent quickly recovered and hit Issei's abdomen this time. Both began to give each other a great series of constant, and without retreating at any time, Issei threw a punch with his metallic arm, being responded by his opponent. When both collided their arms, the body of his opponent began, this time changing his skin to a green tone of large pointy ears. Neither of the opponents said another word, and they looked into each other's eyes for a moment before bumping fists again. Krom Kruch, the most powerful evil dragon, who is a brutally ruthless and sadistic warlord with her opponents, and, above all, someone with great dragon pride, was having trouble with her greatest opponent. She wasn't stupid or idiotic. Hydra had great monsters in its ranks who had great powers. There was a top group of those who were brutally strong, and Hydra was divided into 3 groups. However, her opponent had long black hair and a half-beard still growing. He looked like a man who was about to reach his 30s or 40s, and to think that you would betray us too, Krom Kruch. The man spoke, clearly annoyed, looking at his opponent. I don't think criticizing me seems hypocritical on your part, Graviton. Crumb smiled at the man whose side. Raising both arms, the earth began to float in the heavens. Graviton looked at Crumb, who simply couldn't get that smile off his face. Let's think about this once and for all. Cracking his knuckles, Crumb readied himself. That's the only thing we can agree on. Graviton replied. Chapter 14. It's good to see you, Loki. Who brought you to this place? The man spoke calmly. It's strange, you know, father, Loki said with a small smile on his face, that all this is happening because of you and others, that the world is slowly beginning to fall into Ragnarok. Odin simply listened to everything from his son, while Loki gazed at the stars. The strangest thing about the matter is that you are not as strong as before. Even Alan locking you up here for committing traction was a very hard blow. Loki smiled. Even your favorite son Thor turned his back on you. Tell me, father, how does it feel to be garbage like me now? I see you don't dare to speak to me, although after all, you and I are going to be together for quite some time in this place. Loki closed his eyes. I will be your torment. Roigun, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Ain, how are the people? Roigun asked as he stood up. The people managed to escape and are outside the city. Looking at the battle zone, Azazel and many fallen angels are about to arrive, as well as the forces of heaven. This is fine. Before he could even finish his entire sentence, a huge explosion occurred in the city of Lilith, which brought the attention of all the demonic warriors and the forces of Hydra. When they turned their gaze, they saw how high magic circles began to appear and began to be felt throughout the place. Roigun, Ain, Sona, and the remains of the newest Nexus member began to see how a gigantic black nine-tailed fox had fallen from the sky itself. The beast Ponte launched a powerful roar throughout the place, causing the entire demonic world to stop and focus their sight on the QB. The nine-tailed fox generated magical energy in its mouth and launched a powerful, devastating attack, taking away and destroying a large part of the city. Releasing a powerful roar again. The QB was about to attack but received a great direct magical power, causing an explosion. The QB let out a powerful grunt of pain, and when he turned his gaze to the one who attacked him, he saw Malicious surrounded by the power of destruction, being accompanied by the Citri and Asgar's group. Saji, upon seeing the QB, did not hesitate to activate the balance break and launch his whip with several fireballs. It was time for the attack. The Citrus bishops Momo and Rhea created variants of elemental magic attacks and launched their power at the QB. The Meguri and Benia Knights used their speed and attacked the legs of the powerful fox, while the werewolf took a great leap and with his fist hit the QB's face. Letting out a brutal roar again, the great fox counterattacked using its powerful tails. Several spheres of different natural elements, as well as magic and, above all, Tuki formed. And it was the moment when everyone reacted and, joining together, created magical shields. The QB launched his large-scale magical attack, but the QB's magical attacks returned to him, causing the QB to give a powerful cry of pain. Because you don't count the rookies anymore. A male voice spoke behind the young men. It's been a long time since we last saw each other, descendant of Chaukaro. Sona was the one who spoke. I say the same, Mao, Leviathan. I didn't think we would meet under these circumstances. Referring to the attack. It was lucky that we arrived on time. Same here, I'm glad to know we still have allies. Sona would adjust her glasses. It's a pleasure to see you again, Chow Chow. Valkyrie Rossweiss, same to you. Chow Chow would look at the QB. We better take care of him, someone has an idea. Fixing his sights on the rest of the demons who were right there, the QB once again let out a powerful, violent roar, and when he was about to attack, several chains suddenly emerged, trapping a large part of the body of the enormous nine-tailed fox. That is, they are the same chains with which we managed to catch Fenrir. Rossweiss approached the group. Roigun-sama thought that it would be necessary to protect them since these same chains were used on the previous leaders, especially on the previous Lucifer Sirzechs Gremory. Rossweiss created several circles behind her. We have the opportunity to attack now. The entire group nodded and launched themselves at the enormous nine-tailed fox, who could barely move much of his body, receiving a massive magical attack from Rossweiss, who severely damaged him. The QB attacked with blue fire from his mouth. But Chow Chow, using his true Longinus, created several spheres that returned the attack with double the damage, causing an explosion. The QB let out another great roar, but it was Saji's opportunity, who using his sacred gears managed to completely weaken the QB. The QB, feeling Saji's whip on one of his legs, tried to attack him, but was easily repelled by a powerful kick to his mouth courtesy of Ain, who came to the aid of the other members, who did not hesitate to see who approached was the same Mao Lucifer along with Elter Belzebu. Both demons created a huge pentagram, and using elemental magic in the case of Elter, she used electricity magic and Roigun fire magic. Both attacks combined and hit the QB hard. Letting out a great grunt of pain, the QB generated several balls of energy in his tail and threw them in all possible directions, causing great disasters in the enormous city of the underworld. The attack was so destructive that several demonic soldiers and several Hydra soldiers ended up dying, while the enormous city was completely in ruins. It was the Milika's turn to attack. Their eyes shone a powerful crimson color charged with the power of destruction. In their hands they launched a red energy ball with black touches, and when it touched an area of the QB's body it caused great brutal damage to the QB. This attack made the QB more upset than he was. But about to attack him, the sky was covered with several transportation circles, where from there came out a legion of angels from heaven and several fallen angels. The reinforcements had already arrived, and they did not hesitate to go straight into the fight. Roigun and the rest who were fighting against the QB quickly saw how several powerful allies arrived. Sorry for the delay, it was too difficult to form everyone in the group. Penemu spoke, approaching the group. But I was able to bring all the reinforcements we need. Everyone's gaze focused on the new arrivals: Serog Tiamat, Dilio Gesualdo, Griselda, Lint, members of the Slash Dog team, members of the previous hero faction, Almenhild, Ingvild, Kuroka Tujo, Gasper Vladi, who was wearing war armor, Lu Gauro, Benia, Gremory Militias, Perseus, Lavinia Reni, Tan and Venelana Gremory, and finally Vala Lucifer, Roigun, Saji, Sona, Chow Chow, Eltir, Sikvera, remaining members of the Citri group, along with Penemu, and the rest of those who were right there turned their sight to the QB, whose eyes shone red. Releasing a powerful scream, the QB was creating several balls of energy from its tails. Gasper's eyes shone and stopped the QB's time, and it was the moment of Dulio's attack, who created a huge devastating tornado, while Tiamat launched a powerful ice magic attack, and Tannen launched several fire meteorites, causing a huge explosion damaging the QB. Nexus! Roigun shouted, attracting everyone's attention. United! And with that last shout everyone attacked the QB. Serog Bale with Regulo's Nemia in balance break activated attacked with several direct blows, while Lint along with Griselda attacked with several light attacks and Garu attacked with several melee attacks. The QB tried to counterattack but received two devastating attacks from Venelana Bale and Milika's Gremory, who was in the sky. Elmenhild and Ingvild along with Kuroka attacked from a distance with powerful magical attacks, causing great damaging attack to the QB. The two dragons Tiamat and Tannen attacked. Tannen knocked down the QB and charged from his mouth a fire attack and threw it directly at the QB's face, causing another explosion and damaging the QB, who threw Tannen far away but couldn't even get up as Tiamat attacked with several brutal blows, and putting her hand on the ground several ice stakes emerged from the ground, preventing anything from moving. The members of the previous faction of heroes all attacked, following Kai Chao, Heracles Jian and Perseus hurt and cut parts of the QB. The QB in a desperate attempt tried to break the chains but received a fire attack from Saji, completely burning one of his tails. I think it's time we ended this. Roigun appeared in the sky accompanied by Eltir, Ain, Penemu and finally Ross Weiss, creating several spears. Penemu launched herself directly at the QB, running all over its body. She stuck several spears all over its body and then jumping with a spin, several spears stuck in its body exploded, damaging it brutally. It was Ain's turn, who launched a huge axe kick charged with darkness magic and hit the QB's head. And without hesitation Elitir's eyes shone green and several magic circles accompanied by Ross Weiss attacked in duel using various natural elements, causing a huge explosion. Gasper stood next to Roigun as they both walked towards the QB. Ready? Gasper asked seriously. Roigun's arms were covered by darkness magic, and she smiled. I'm always ready. Gasper put on a smile and turning into several bats attacked the QB, seriously injuring it, and it was right there that Roygun attacked with a great magical attack that made everyone else quickly move away from that combat zone. Before the huge shock wave took everything around him, Dulio used his sacred gears, creating a huge change in the weather and powerful winds, managing to stop the shock wave and generate it all in one place. When the shock wave managed to stop a gigantic crater, it was the only thing left of that place if it weren't also because Vala had absorbed some of Roygun's power with his divide. Surely half the demonic city would have been destroyed. I see why she's the new Mao Lucifer. She's capable of destroying an entire continent. I speak of a giant floating head observing that battle site in the distance. The information has been successfully collected, the first steps were ready. The QB was a great idea, but now it would remain to mix the powers of the Securidii, so get everything ready for phase 2 of our plan. I trust you'll do it well, Arnim Zola, human world. It seems we managed to avoid it for the moment. Jalter spoke, who had several wounds on his body. Crom Kuoh was next to him, while Issei was sitting in a chair. Are you sure you're going to do it? You know there's no turning back. Crom Kuoh turned his gaze back. From that door 2 people were entering the room. One was a boy with short black hair accompanied by a small wolf, and the other was a tall man with black hair and blonde locks. Tobio accused, and Azazel, once they are with us, they will not leave them alone. The human and the demon looked at each other and nodded, and then Azazel stepped forward. I know, but I stopped being the leader of the Fallen a long time ago. But I don't care if I have to fight someone better than me to take care of all this. I came here for something, and I'm going to help you, Issei. You're my friend. Crom Kuoh sighed, as did Jalter. We need a team. Crom Kuoh mentioned. Leave it to me, I have the perfect candidates. I mentioned Azazel. Epilogue. Are you sure they are in this place? In the middle of a field, there were 2 hooded men walking towards a small farm that was in the middle. Both were approximately 1.80 tall and had a thin build. If you should not worry about anything, they are in this place, said the man with total calm. Besides, we are talking about them, who after all that commotion are still alive. I never understood why they forgave her, after everything they did. You should not think like that, there is more than you think, said the older man, interrupting him. Due to the achievements against Ryzavan and the evil dragons, they did a great job protecting the underworld and the rest of the supernatural, he said with total calm. In addition, it was a note from the new leaders, which they were released and exiled, but at the same time their powers were sealed. But as a reward for helping in the war, they were given a home and a livelihood. The companion did not respond while both approached the farm. There was, in the crop field, a group of girls, raking while several children were playing in the wild. The women, each and every one of them, was totally attractive with great physique and total beauty. Well, girls, today's work is over, said a beautiful red-haired woman with a smile on her face while bringing glasses of lemonade to the others. Let's rest for today was enough. Era Rias, thank you very much. Thank you, Rias-1-sama. Thank you, Rias-senpai. Each and every one of them sat on the ground while they took advantage and discussed among themselves, talking about various unimportant topics. Rias Gremory, the former heiress of the Gremory clan, currently her beauty was completely different from a few years ago. She still maintained her great body despite having a son. She had a great figure, like the rest of the previous Gremory entourage. However, while they were calmly talking, they felt someone's gaze and turned their heads, seeing the men on the other side of the fence. It's been a while, Miss Rias Gremory, the older man said. Rias and the rest looked at the men, with Rias responding to the man's greeting. Same here, Lord of the Underworld Court and former clan member of the Ancient Saint faction, he said in a cold and emotionless voice. Euclides? _00_ things seem to be getting better, even if it's just a little bit. Roygun spoke, standing in front of a mountain far from Lilith City, watching as all the underworld citizens, along with several members of the Grand Alliance, were helping with the cleaning. Not much can be done right now, Roygun. Despite everything, we managed to withstand Hydra's attack. At his side was the Valkyrie Rossweiss, who was wearing her Valkyrie armor. Unlike before, her beauty was at another level, but despite showing a strong character and being the new queen of the Valkyries and having doubled the responsibility of before. And in the end, Naya, what happened to her? Kuroko was sitting on the edge of that mountain, and cross-legged watching from a distance. Her beauty had grown more than before, and her power had increased. After everything that had happened, she still maintained her typical calm and quiet attitude from before. No, apparently her body is in a vegetative state. From what Kuoh mentioned, Yasaka was corrupted with the entire level of Senjutsu chakra. Corrupting her completely. Roygun narrowed his eyes. Well, were the words of Rosweiss, who brought her hand to her chin, adopting a thoughtful position. I think there are many more things than what we are losing, right? Ingvild Leviathan spoke calmly. It's a lot to keep secret. Hydra did not hesitate to attack us. And right now the vampire faction seems to be willing to form an alliance with us again. Releasing aside, there are many things to fix. We should thank Gasper. Naya Kuroka mentioned he was the one who was totally determined to help us. After what had happened, Naya. You're right, Kuroka. Rosweiss nodded. We should thank Gasper for his help. Later, they have heard the latest rumor. Out of nowhere he appeared. The women, hearing the voice of that person known to them, looked over their shoulders and saw Gasper, who was approaching the group of women with a calm look on his face. What do you mean, Naya? After Kuroka's question, Gasper tilted his head to the side, showing a strange black energy sphere with hints of red. That's it, Roygun spoke in surprise to see that black sphere with hints of red, one of the cores of the Bullied gears from Dreen. Gasper said while narrowing his eyes, but they were supposed to have been destroyed by Azazel after that. The main core that each sacred gears had in particular, or rather two Longinus, that of the White Emperor with its divide, and then with the Bullied gears, those same cores were the ones that prevented the user from using their full potential to the maximum and managed to retain both celestial dragons. However, at the time of Dreen's release, Azazel, who supposedly destroyed the cores, had not thrown him out. The question is why. This is quite strange, Ingvild mentioned as he approached the group. Some time ago these spheres were in a secret laboratory in Sweden. Gasper mentioned, looking at both spheres. It's strange because it's supposed to have been destroyed by the high level of danger it carries. Ingvild looked at the spheres and then his gaze went to the disaster in the laboratory. The place was totally destroyed, but by whom, Naya? Whatever it is there, we have to investigate them and keep Azazel under surveillance. Let's not let anyone suspect our movements, Rosweiss said. Girls, you have to see this. After what Gasper said, they all turned their gaze towards one of the computers, to then see a specific file. Roygun approached and looked at the name of said file. Winter Soldier Project. Hearing the name, everyone in the place began to pay attention to Roygun's voice. After mixing several supernatural components, see the creation of hybrids after the failure in the Heaven system, as well as seeing the birth of a half-breed with sacred gears, we take great measures to know these strange anomalies. Several are forceful subjects. Akino Himejima, alias the Priestess of Lightning, also an extra class since her blood has the blood of a demon, fallen angel, and human. In addition, her son Sen Himejima is an extraordinary mixture of beings composed of a fallen dragon, demon, and human, different abilities and powers, and the strongest of all the children of the Sekyudai. This project is based on future threats against humanity and the plans of future demons and fallen angels. Like any supernatural being, it is to try to keep supernatural beings at bay and protect the balance of the world. Triaxo was a greater threat to the world, but there are dangers beyond the universe, and the world would fall. Test Subject 0. With Tando and the first test subject number 0, we managed to easily extract Sen Himejima's hybrid blood and create a serum so that the human's strength changes for the better. After the first injection, the human began to show horrible changes, which caused his internal organs to explode and his head to explode. In conclusion, total failure. February. 2 months have passed since Issei disappeared from the radar and the world. He is calm, but he does not deny that there is more problem than there already was, and Isaac was acting strange. Not only that, but those who never accepted Isaac were planning something in the shadows. So far, the Winter Soldier project is going from bad to worse. Subject number 120. Trying to find the best way to change everything. We made a compound of everything, and trying to analyze the blood type was an option, but it would take work to carry out. So we decided to do it, but unlike the other test subjects, this one managed to maintain his normal state for quite some time until he lost all control of himself and killed all the scientists. I managed to save myself by narrowly with the final conclusion. Issei Ex-Hyoudou's blood is the one indicated for the definitive test. Currently his wounds and blood of God may be the best option, but erasing his memory would be indicated. There is nothing else, Roygun said while looking at the rest of the blank leaves. So that's why that Issei no longer recognizes, Rosweiss said, distressed. Everyone in place also put on expressions similar to Rosswise's Kuroka, simply smiled bitterly as she sat on the floor and looked at the ring she had. It would be better if you didn't think like that. Gasper spoke. Kappas, I don't remember her, but there is a great possibility that you two will find her and talk, Kappas, and rebuild your relationship. Would be best to start from scratch. Besides, you still have your mark, Gasper said with a smile. The girls laughed and nodded because there was no time to think negatively. Roygun looked at this once more, and then his gaze turned to Gasper. Gasper, I have to ask you a favor. I want you to free Grayfia. Lucifer. The surprise was present in everyone after what Roygun said. Gasper, for his part, looked at the Mao Lucifer. May I know why? Smiling, I want to do something with her. Maybe her power in recent years. Alan has been out of something else, squinting his eyes, but I need your strength and your help with a hunting and information job. I'm listening to you then, Mao Lucifer.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.